another amazing episode, whether you loved it or hated it or somewhere in between. You can't deny that a lot happened. It was just really kind of a blur. Watching it the second time, it just, I just was like, wow, all these things happened in this episode. So many things.
After the second time I watched it, I still felt like I hadn't watched it all yet. That makes sense. Yeah. I watched it a third time.
So to start off, I'll say that it was a surprise, sort of, to see the man who's directed the most ever episodes of the comedy show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia direct one of the most, epic episodes of Game of Thrones ever. But this episode maybe felt more like what I would expect from Matt Shakman. A lot of snappy dialogue, a lot of humor, more humor than average, I think. Some self-referential jokes thrown in there for good measure, one or two of those. A lot of callbacks, which is something It's Always Sunny does a lot of, and some nostalgia, which Sunny does a little of that, but that's one of the cool things about having a show in season 7 is you can actually have nostalgia.
Yeah.
Characters can be like, remember that time 5 years ago or 5 seasons ago where we did this and that? Like, oh yeah, y'all did that.
I wonder a lot of times what the exact interplay or role between the writers and the directors are.
Yeah, me too.
I remember reading an article about this season where it was one of the actors, I think, said that sometimes they would play around with the dialogue, test out a few lines, go with what works, but that this time they're a little bit more regimented. No, just stick to the script. But I wonder how much Matt Shakman gets to adjust the script to do these self-referential flashback, callback things like he does in Always Sunny in here, or if the show writers were doing that themselves, or if the show writers picked him because they knew that he would work with that well or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So I would say this was kind of an epic episode, just not in a spectacular way. It wasn't like battles, it was visually beautiful. There were a lot of amazing shots, but it wasn't like action oriented. It was really a setup episode for the final two. It's
the type of episode I can imagine more casual fans being like, no battle, no sex scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas us fans are like, what? Rhaegar is who?
Yeah. It was like, I certainly exclaimed out loud during that moment.
Shut up, Sam. Go back to the book.
I've been calling this episode #Reunion Bowl, but it's also #Father's Bowl. So let's just run through it real fast. Bronn and Tyrion, Jaime and Tyrion, Tyrion and Jorah, Jorah and Dany, Gendry and Davos, Gendry and the Brotherhood, Sandor and Jon, which that one's maybe, they didn't really have a conversation before, so maybe we can toss that one out. But Thoros and Jorah also, that's another one.
Not something we saw on screen, but something that we know happened
from
in
their
the past.
From the Greyjoy Rebellion, they charged through the breach like at the same time. They were like the first two guys getting through. And honorable mention to Jon finding out that Arya and Brienne are alive. So that's not a reunion, but he's, that warms the heart. Except that he received really awful news at the same time.
It was so heartwarming. He rushed straight home to see them. Wait.
But it was also an episode about fathers, right? There was major mentions of fathers and fatherhood and the past in that regard, mostly around fathers, not mothers in this particular case, although there was a little bit of that in there. But Jeor Mormont was brought up by both Tormund and Tyrion. Ned Stark was brought up by Gendry and Jon, kind of incidentally, and I think maybe one other time. Rhaegar Targaryen was flat out brought up by Gilly and referred to kind of incidentally by Gendry when you thought he was talking to Jon about their fathers. Yeah. Of course, the subtext is who his father really was.
I guess maybe you could debate the definition of father.
Sure, yeah, father and sire.
Who raised you your whole life. That's, you call that your father.
Either way, it suggested both Rhaegar and Ned in that scene. Of course, Aerys comes up a lot in this episode, from Varys, from Daenerys, from Tyrion. A lot of people mention Aerys, including, Randall Tarley even brings him up. And Randall Tarley is another one who gets mentioned a lot. He gets mentioned by several people. Sam even quotes him. When Sam is leaving the Citadel, he says, I'm tired of, reading about the works of better men, which is something that Randall
prodded him with.
Yeah, and of course Tywin as well, and Robert. Both of them were mentioned a lot. Gendry, of course, Robert, that's obvious. And then Davos brings it up in front of Jon, or tells him not to bring it up in front of Jon, and then he does, rather. And then Tywin's brought...
All 3 times when I watched that, I laughed each time at that moment. Davos' reaction right there, and the fact that Gendry just does it.
Yeah, and Tywin's, of course, brought up by Jaime and Tyrion, and then again with Jaime and Cersei. So it's just the fatherhood theme was really strong, and then of course Jaime finds out he's a father.
Yeah.
To put a cherry on top, a father again. He was, for a little while, he was out of the fatherhood game, and now he's right back in.
As neat as that was, it also brings up something. I don't want to be too negative because I love this show and they're doing so much with it, but It's a little disappointing that it would be hard for them to have an episode with a bunch of nods to the matriarchs. There just aren't as many. We don't even know the names of a bunch of these characters' moms, you know?
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. I mean, we did get a little bit of a nod to Catelyn there when Sansa and Arya were in the bedroom, you know, and talked about that was the mother's bedroom.
But that's like a 12-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. This is really about so many of these fathers were really, really powerful people, and you know, in the realm of Westeros, it's harder for a woman to get power. Though we're seeing that in the show, like in the modern, current times, there's quite a few women in power.
Even aside from their level of power, though, how many of these characters do we literally not even know who their moms are? You know,
quite a few. Like some of them, we just know like what family they were a part of without knowing their name, and some other ones we do know their name without many details. Yeah, it's.
Anyway, if any writers out there are listening,
and a lot of them died, you know, before. Like for example, both people like to point to the fact that Jon, Tyrion, and Dany were all, you know, the third child, you know, of their, you know, Rhaegar's third child is Jon, and Tyrion's the third child of Tywin and Joanna, and well, presumably, and same thing with Daenerys. She's the third child of Rhaella and Aerys, and their mothers died giving birth to them. So that's long been a thing that people have used to connect them, and so that's kind of cool. So that's one of the problems is George wrote so many of their mothers to be dead, and that's like, okay, well. We have a few announcements before we get started. We have a bit more than the usual number of announcements, so apologize for that. Bear with us for a minute here. These are all pretty important things. For example, we did a episode on Saturday with a big help from Ashea LML from the Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire podcast, and I did a co-episode about the symbols in the cave. Mostly it's a book to show episode. It's mostly taking those symbols and kind of interpreting what they mean for the books and a lot of other things. The thing is, it's video only. This is something we haven't done in a long time, and it's just because the episode is really visual. So if you're listening to this on podcast, you're not going to see it in your feeds. You need to go to YouTube if you want to see it, and we apologize for that. But that's really if you do come to watch the episode, you'll see why it's video only. It's just we put a lot of images in it. It just doesn't work as an audio only thing. We're constantly referring to things that, like, what's he talking about? What's the symbol? So yeah, it just doesn't work as an audio only. But that's not going to be a regular thing. We're going to almost 98% of our episodes are going to be released on both feeds.
The central point of that was to talk about the symbols in the cave, which is all visual, right?
Yeah, well, and we relate it to the birth of the others, the children of the forest, and not the birth of the White Walkers, relating it to the children, relating that to a lot of ancient history. It's good stuff. You all should check it out if you haven't already. Also, I want to announce the Kialo tournament. This is a really big deal. You're going to have to check out Kialo to get the full picture. Kialo is Kialo. We're going to post links up to it, so you keep an eye out for those. But this is a debate tournament, structured debate tournament, not the kind of debate you're thinking of, not two people going at it at a podium or something, not people writing back and forth. You create your own debate. You make your own pros and cons for your argument. No one else is involved. You can have people involved if you want, but that's not required. First place is $10,000. So get on that, folks. You know, this is a company that's trying to get the Game of Thrones community into their website, and they're making a big push for it. So if enough people turn up, these prizes will be what they say. I suppose they might pull the plug on it if they don't get enough people, but with that kind of prize money, they should be able to attract enough people in there. Ashea and I are among the judges for that, along with some of the Radio Westeros folks, along with some of our other good friends out there in the community, whose names we'll announce later. I didn't bother to grab the list right now, kind of forgot. This is hectic last 22 hours. I've never gotten more emails and messages and tweets about an episode that we did on Sunday.
As easy if I understand right, that Kialo debate, the idea is sort of like they recognize that there are debates out there and that there's points on both sides, and they want to consolidate these arguments, right? Kind of like you might go to Wikipedia to read about why they dropped the atomic bomb. You might go to Kialo to figure out why some people think that Jon is Rhaegar's son.
Exactly. It's very much, in fact, it's good that you use the term that you brought up, Wikipedia, because they are aiming to be the Wikipedia of debates. They want to have, their goal was, they talked about how there's a lot of what on the internet and a lot of how, but not the why. And that's the thing they're trying to get at, because they realize that the modern discourse doesn't work very well on the internet, especially because of time-sensitive things. Like somebody may say something really important, and then in a Facebook comment thread, that's buried.
I don't know what you're talking about. Twitter is perfect for complex discourse.
Anyway, so that's enough about that. I spent more time talking about that than I intended to, but with that kind of prize money, there's also second place and money all the way down the line. So really very much worth it. Check that out. We'll have more details on that later because it's going to be running for a little while. But it's not. It's going to run only this month though. The winners are going to be decided in September. Also, this is cool. We're doing something fun. We're doing a giveaway. Shay's going to pull up some images here. We've got the GRRM box. This is a great collector's item. We're going to do a drawing. We're giving away 5 of these boxes. 4 of them are the special edition boxes, and 1 of them is the limited edition box. To find out what's in them, you can click on the link that Shay is going to be posting up, and you can see it in the images there, and we'll have links to it on our website as well. There's really cool stuff in here. They gave us one of them, or actually gave us 2 of them as a sample to look at. There's coins, there's signed lithograph by George R. Martin, there's maps, there's all kinds of good stuff in there. So I won't go through all the details because we got a lot to cover today, but click on those links if you're interested. And if you want to enter our giveaway, we're going to give out 1 this week, 2 next week, 2 the week after, roughly speaking. To enter, send an email to westeroshistorygiveaway@gmail.com. It's our usual email address, but with giveaway at the end instead of just Westeros History. Again, that's westeroshistorygiveaway@gmail.com. All you have to do is send us a message with the title giveaway, and we will enter you in the drawing. Simple as that. Now, one other caveat with that drawing, they're not willing to send it overseas, but we are. So we're going to pay the freight to send one of those 5 to an overseas winner. They only want to send it to the U.S. and Canada, but we're going to make sure that somebody overseas gets one of these. So we're going to take care of y'all in that regard. And if you do want to buy one of these, if you don't want to test your luck on winning them in this random giveaway, go to their website and use the coupon code WesterosBox and you get 10% off. So that's pretty cool. All right. Blazing through these announcements, also want to thank our History of Westeros first sword. That's Jeff Gnarly, the Long Snapper. Great guy. And of course, our Dragon Rider patrons who... We've got new art here for you. First of all, Lord Mark of House Joseph, the Snow in Winterfell, rider of Mazalacartho, a white dragon with green scales, horns, wings, and talons. Looking good there, art by Azani. Then we have our 2 hatchlings, Telenis the Talon, king of Gagassos, rider of Telarius, a red dragon with scales, horns, and talons of midnight black. Jinx of House Lier, green queen of the Rainwood, rider of Irogenia, a sylphic albino dragon with amethyst eyes and opalescent wings. Pictured for the first time. Thanks to Ed Shear for both the hatchling arts. That's really good stuff. And we'll be following their growth as the months pass by. All right. I think I have maybe only one more announcement. No, that's it. The only other announcement I have is that we're trying out a new audio setup, so hopefully that's working out for you guys. It seems to be working out for us so far, but it's early still. So we will see how that goes. Hopefully that clears up some of the recent problems we've had and makes it sound better. So let us go to, let's see, Team Daenerys and Team Jon. We're doing the locations a little bit different because people moved around so much, right? There was up and down and back and forth with characters going all over the place, and you had people that were in 3 locations all in one episode, and it was that's kind of why we were calling this episode a bit of a blur, isn't it? But let's start where the episode starts. Let's start with the burning of the Tarleys. And...
I'm going to extend that out.
Yeah. With the burning of the Tarleys, which is, we'll see this image here Shay is pulling up. I really thought Dany's speech was going really well until that last line where she says, but die. Like, it was like, oh, she was painting herself as the opposite to Cersei. Like, that's Cersei who does that. That's Cersei who does this. But now I'm going to say something just like Cersei. It's like, oh, come on. She basically just, like, was the anti-Cersei until she became Cersei/Aerys, like, all at once. Like, oh, man. And the camera cuts to Tyrion, and he's like, yeah.
I want to say, by the way, there's a parallel to draw here. A lot of people complain about Sansa challenging Jon in front of everyone. Here's Tyrion challenging Dany in front of everyone.
Yeah, although he wasn't quite as loud about it, but you're right. It was a little similar. You're right, because it was clear he was disagreeing with her, even if people couldn't hear what was being said. It was clear he was disagreeing.
The thought crossed my mind at first, but like I said, I watched the episode 3 times, and there was a shot of the audience as Tyrion's questioning her, and you can hear her voice. You can see the people in the audience hear her saying, again quietly, but you can still hear it's audible. It seemed as though it was audible to the crowd her arguments back to Tyrion.
I see the Snow and Winterfell pointing out accurately that actually this episode started with Bronn and Jaime in the water, and yeah, actually he's right. That's true. We're going to get to that part later. I kind of agree with what you're saying there about it, though, Mark. I was kind of not so happy with that resolution. It wasn't terrible, but I kind of said meh at that one.
I wish he had at least shed some armor, you know?
Yeah. There's a bit more context here with Dany and Drogon, with their bond. Like, Drogon was, like, reading what Dany wanted. You know, it wasn't, like, mind, telepathy or anything like that. But clearly she could, well, maybe it's sort of like that.
Yeah. Maybe it's not active. Maybe it's passive, you know?
Yeah. But it was very much he knew what she wanted, rudimentarily. Like, obviously, if she couldn't give him complex instructions, probably. At least not that we know of yet. There's no evidence of that yet. Maybe it's there. But, yeah, so that's kind of interesting.
He seemed to respond after she said, okay, bend the knee or die, and a few bent the knee, but not all the rest. And he, without command, shifted forward, roared at them,
It's like someone reflecting their emotions, like a dog may reflect its owner's.
Someone had asked on a different thread that I follow on Facebook about how Dany's controlling Drogon. If he's responding to, like, movements of her knees and her hands. She doesn't seem to use a lot of verbal commands other than Dracarys. And if she can control him non-verbally, why does she bother with Dracarys? And I kind of responded to that by pointing out that you don't always tell a dog to come here, but sometimes you do. Sometimes a dog understands your command, or sometimes you say it when you don't need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a horse, I think, along the same lines. And I think that's not only is there sort of a mix between Drogon understanding what's expected of him, and sometimes she needs to say it, and sometimes she doesn't. Sometimes she says it when she doesn't need to. And also some sort of passive telepathic emotional connection that they have that has been at least alluded to of dragon riders of the past, right? So
yeah. So later on we transition to Tyrion drinking with Varys. This is an interesting scene. There's some interesting subtext here. Tyrion's kind of making the same excuses that Dany just gave him, but you can tell he doesn't really believe them. He's just, well, she said that she gave them a choice, and then Varys grabs his wine glass and starts drinking with them. And yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good scene because Varys is talking about how he lived through this. And he's like, that's what I told myself. That's what I, and Tyrion's like, ugh. And, I asked on Twitter if people can remember Varys drinking before, and he has, but it's pretty rare. And you think that the fact that Tyrion didn't even offer him a glass was like kind of an expectation, like don't expect that you want any because you don't normally drink, So it just shows Varys' state of mind that he's like, oh, I need a drink.
I particularly like this scene, and I think it's easy to get lost. I've mentioned this about a couple episodes this season. They're so packed with so many momentous, epic moments. But it seemed like this should have been really powerful. These two characters trying to reconcile their responsibilities to the loss of human life. It's a really powerful thing. It's a moral question that a lot of the show is bringing up, moral questions like this. And it was almost just, it's almost just like a comedic moment that just skipped forward to the next big epic moment, But I think it's a really important moment that was
I agree. And, and it makes me back off on the predictions that he might turn on here. He seems genuinely devoted to trying to make her see things the right way, and there was no hint of pending betrayal. That definitely said a lot to me about where Varys is right now.
That said, it also reinforced the idea he presented earlier that he wants to back a good leader, and he saw Aerys wasn't a good leader. You know what I mean? Like, he was struggling. He was having to justify himself letting this happen. If he has to justify himself letting this happen with Dany, he told Dany, look, Dany requested of him, tell me if I'm doing this. Don't sneak behind my back and connive. Let me know up front,
So we'll see if that happens. We'll see if Dany goes farther. But, of course, this is, in the short term, this might be a little bit moot. If Dany is pushing for an armistice, if this armistice plays out, then in the short term, Dany won't be burning anybody. Or, maybe that gives them time to get through to her a little bit. On the other hand, it might make her nervous and anxious and all these other things. We'll see. Especially if it doesn't go the way they want it to, which, as we'll get into later, a lot of reason to suspect the armistice won't go the way they want it to. I see a super chat here from Acre Frey saying Davos dealing with the sentries was absolutely golden. Yes, it was. That was hilarious. I love that. Of course, it just fits. Like, of course he's used to dealing with guards. He's a smuggler. This is like old hat for him. It was great. I love to see Davos do his thing. We've never really seen that since he brought Melisandre up to Storm's End. We haven't really seen him do his thing.
Shades of Han Solo.
Yeah, right on. I see someone say the audio is a little low.
There's nothing I can do about it unless you move the game.
Okay, we'll see. We'll do a little adjustment here.
I would like to move the webcam if we could, but...
Let's try that. Okay, so yeah, again, folks, we're working with some new equipment here, so bear with us. This should make our audio a lot better going forward, but there might be a few speed bumps along the way as we get used to it. So yeah, like I said, so that might be moot, especially because of this letter and with everybody turning their attention north, and now Dany is invested in this northern plot because she's already clearly starting to like Jon. Like her body language was, she was just a little bit distraught at him leaving and putting himself at risk like this. And after, and given what we just said about how her emotions are sort of tied up in Drogon, that scene with Drogon and Jon was part about Dany, not about Drogon. That was part about her emotions. So that's really important too. So it's kind of confusing how this is going to play out. There's so many, maybe not confusing, but there's just so many possibilities. So we'll just have to see on that. And also, I got to mention, shout out to Varys for his fake/funny indignance at the Fortarians. Like, well, did you read the letter? You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's to the king in the north. He's like, what does it say? He's like, all right, well, it says this. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
I thought that was, again, with that scene, it was the way Varys was tapping it on the ground. That was like it's the type of thing, it's the type of subtle thing to add some real. They didn't have to do that. Somewhere between the director and the actor, they decided to have him tap it on the
like
the
a
ground
nervous
like that.
thing. Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah, that was a good touch.
And that was really good too. Talking about Dany, Drogon, and Jon there. A lot of times Emilia Clarke, I think, gets attacked for not being a particularly good actress. I don't have a particular comment on that, but I think she did do particularly well in that moment. There was this mix of concern. She's like, oh God. She was, one, legit worried the dragon might hurt someone, period. But two, it's Jon. She clearly had some emotion toward him. And then that shifted to, like, surprise, like, he's not just gobbling him down. Wow, this is like a unique thing. I thought that was another really great moment on multiple levels. And that one maybe is one people will remember more. That was a little bit more spectacular than the subdued conversation between Tyrion and Varys.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this episode for me was I had mixed feelings about this episode. I really liked a lot of it, and I think that the way to divide it, like if you were to look at the logistics of this episode, it's kind of particularly bad. You know, and this is a show that often messes with logistics. But the character stories and the dialogue were particularly good. So it's like, this is typical Game of Thrones. There's plenty of things that you can really viciously and totally criticize, but there's so many awesome things too that it's really just a matter of perspective. It's like, if you really focus on those negative things, it can really take you into a hole and be like, this sucked. But if you really focus on those good things, you can be, man, this was great, this was awesome. Yeah. And I've seen pretty mixed reviews on the overall. The episode is doing really well. And like I said, we've never gotten more questions and comments after an episode before. But there are certainly people that thought it was meh.
It's a thought that I've had in general has become a little clarified by this episode. A lot of times, a writer or a filmmaker, they have something they want to happen. They have an image they want on screen or a line of dialogue they want spoken, right?
Yeah.
And whether because it's integral to the development of the characters of the plot or because it's, maybe a beautiful image or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times getting the plot and the characters to that moment, to that scene, is difficult. And I think there's a lot of scenes here where I'm like, well, I question some of the logic behind how they got to this scene. However, what matters is this scene.
Yeah.
And I think they could have gotten to the scene. I think they could have done it if there are 14 episodes this season.
Yeah.
But there aren't. I recognize it's stressful and it's frustrating, but I recognize that some of the things that they need to do to get these moments that they're showing us,
you gotta cheat a little.
They could do it with many more scenes and lines of dialogue, but they don't have time or budget for that. But what really matters is the scene, and they're giving us the scene, and the scene is really good.
And I think you just have to accept that whenever you're dealing with an adaptation. You just know that these logistical things can be described in a matter of paragraphs. But in the real TV, it's like, are we really going to show these armies marching for weeks? Not that they have to go that far, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like, for George, it's a matter of just writing it down. For the showrunners, it's a matter of millions of dollars sometimes. So it's really hard. This is why I just tell people, just try not to compare them. It's so different. Not just because the stories have big divergences, but because the medium is vastly different.
I will say, I do think it's still worth thinking about and even analyzing these things.
Yeah.
Because, one, if they're making mistakes, I don't want to be blind to it.
Yeah. Fair
but
point.
2, because sometimes it does spark new thoughts. You do start to realize why a certain thing happened, or start to consider what might have happened in the time that passed. Or does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
thinking about what might be a problem, sometimes you come up with an answer and a new thought, a new insight, or whatever.
Good point. Super chat from Tad Heichel. This show can be CGI and dragons and wonder, but they do the little quiet things so well too. Things shows might neglect or overlook. I totally agree. People criticize their lack of detail, but they have a ton of detail. It's just some of the details they don't do, but some of the when they do, a lot of the ones they do are awesome. In Tad's case, he's pointing out that Jon takes his glove off to pet Drogon, and he has dirty nails, which makes sense. He's been working in the mines and stuff, and like helping get all this dragon glass, handled. So that's really true. And like you said, the tapping of the scroll, little things like that, little details. They really. If we're going to criticize the lack of in certain places, we should absolutely point out when they do it well too.
I appreciate that everyone's beard isn't perfectly trimmed. I don't wake up like this, These soldiers in a field in medieval times don't necessarily have the...
He's totally lying. He wakes up like this. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. Looks like we have around 700 people watching live. That's awesome. Hit the like button if you get the chance. And let's continue. This shot, usually when we have a shot, Shea is pulling this one up here, John at the cliff. Usually we pull up shots that we want to discuss just because there's something in there. But this one I just pull because it's just so cool. It just looks awesome. And it sets up this next conversation. When John and when Drogon comes and just like comes at John, it's like, whoa, what's going on here? It's like, is Dany just feeling her power because she just won this big battle and took out these lords, and it's like, she's feeling strong? Or is she just trying to remind Jon what's up? To me, this was really cool. There's a really subtle undertone here. Jon he held his ground, but he was clearly nervous.
Yeah.
And it really given what he was wearing, which is a costume like his father, like Ned, not his real father, has totally made me think of a man can only be brave when he's afraid. That quote is like perfect fit for that scene. It's just boom. Speaking of boom, here's this big super chat from the Snow in Winterfell. He says, I asked a lot of questions, so going to get this out of the way now. You all do a great job. Thank you so much to Aziz, Ashea, Sean, Yolkboy, Lady Gwen, even Elamel for the hours and hours of content every week. You guys make my inner fanboy happy. Thanks, Lord Mark. We really appreciate the continuous support, and we do have your questions in here, so they're peppered throughout the episode. So we'll be coming to them quite soon, and again later. In the meantime, we have a question here from Mallory Sand. Which of the Storm, Wolf Rider of Zulfric, the Black Beast? And the question is, how do you guys feel about Drogon and Jon scene? I saw a lot of vloggers saying that Jon looked afraid, but I didn't see fear. I saw bravery. Well, I guess that's how you interpret it. That's kind of what we said. You can only be brave when you're afraid.
So fear and bravery.
Yeah, I think both people are right. Jon was, who wouldn't be a little afraid of that? Like, viscerally primal fear, like you can steel yourself for that, but unless you're used to a dragon being up in your face like that.
Even if that wasn't a dragon, if that had been an elven, some other thing you're more familiar with in the first place, some big creature right in front of you, it can be daunting,
Yeah, right. Seriously,
a monster like that could just accidentally, even if it's trying to be friendly, might just like bump you and knock you over the cliff, or
accident. Look, watch out for that tail, man. That tail can kill people. So here's another great shot that Shea is pulling up for us. Drogon's eye. Really awesome. Gives me a little bit of Jurassic Park vibe, the giant like reptile eye thing, but I like Game of Thrones a hell of a lot more than Jurassic Park. Not a slam against Jurassic Park, just putting things in perspective.
Also, just credit to the visuals. Just overall, this whole episode, the cinematic moments, the landscapes, but also the CGI for the dragon. I'm sure there's people out there who will complain. It's not perfect, but it's better than anything I've ever seen in my life.
It's really
and to
good.
include, when you look at the eye, you even see like the reflection of the sky, and it's like not just the detail of the eye, but the light reflecting off the surface of it.
It seemed to me like, speaking of the bravery and Jon's fear, she could probably recognize Jon was a little afraid, but he still touched Drogon, which I don't recall anyone else doing that. Maybe
Tyrion.
Someone did. Tyrion? Yeah, Tyrion touched the other dragons. I don't know if he touched Drogon. Same deal.
Oh,
You're
maybe
right.
not Drogon, yeah.
You're right. That's close enough.
Tyrion, Dany, and Jon.
Yeah.
Those three drawing parallels again.
What does that mean?
That was another thing, too. The skin actually seemed to move under Jon's fingers.
Yeah, it was really good. He's probably touching some green screen thing, like a green blob, instead of, and they just add
a green
later.
dragon skull from the caverns beneath
Yeah, that's true. And you think that Dany would be a little impressed by that. Like, she's already kind of, like, budding, a little attraction is building there, and that had to help. Like, standing up to my dragon like that, petting him, touching him. Ooh, that's brave. And she was a little concerned. Like, she had that look in her eyes like, huh, what's going on here? I wonder what's happening. He's going to touch him, huh?
Also, what a neat shot that was. That kind of behind her head POV looking down the neck of the dragon to Jon on the ground. Just think about what it took to film that or to even conceive that shot in the first place.
Then we have Dany brings up the heart stab comment, which a couple of people pointed out that's going to, if they ever hook up, which seems likely, that's when it'll be like pretty clear that there's a stab wound right there.
Or several others,
Yeah, and then he won't be able to. He got lucky because Jorah just came up and it was like, we'll talk about that later. That's just a recurring theme of something important being interrupted.
Maybe Jorah will come up again. He'll be like about to take his shirt off and Jorah, by the way, ma'am. By the way, my grace.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
There's an even more important interruption that comes later in the episode, but this one, it's funny to see that happening again. The old interruption thing, right when something important is about to be said. It's something that's in the books a lot, so I love when they give that nod here in the show as well. Okay, so let's talk about the message itself, though. The letter is a big deal. I mean, obviously, it's kind of what Jon was expecting. This news was expected at some point, except for who sent the message. He was like, "Oh, Bran is sending this message, and Arya is alive." So that was shocking. But then he, stands up and is like, "I don't need permission. I'm a king," And Dany again you can tell from her body language, she said that because she didn't want him to leave.
Yeah,
she didn't want him to be in danger like that. That wasn't like, and that's what Dany does. When she's not getting her way, she becomes authoritative. But it was half-hearted. You could tell that she didn't have the force of authority behind it. She was just like, I didn't give you permission to leave. It wasn't quite like that.
She's trying to come up with something that she could say, and she didn't argue back after the fact either.
Yeah. And so there's, as I said, there's different threads to follow here. So we'll come back to Jon going north. We'll stick with the shorter term thing here, which was the mission to King's Landing. And we'll talk about, Tyrion and Jaime. We'll talk about the Tyrion and Jaime part of this later. We'll focus on Gendry and Davos for now. There was a funny line where Tyrion arrives, just another example of the great dialogue in this episode. Tyrion's, last time I was here, I shot my father. And Davos is, last time I was here, you killed my son. You burned my son. And they're like, all right, yeah, that's kind of awkward. And Gendry, also hilarious. I mean, this was widely expected, but they gave it away in so many ways. I mean, it was like, his name was in the credits. Yeah. I mean, it was just right there. Plus he was at the red carpet, in that show. Like, they gave this away. It was telegraphed in a million ways, but that's fine, because they didn't try to sneak him in. It was like, here he comes. He's on the blacksmith street.
And he came in full force, too. He was ready to go.
How quickly he's like, well, I'm ready.
Hear me out. Let me explain why I think you should come. I want to come. Let's go.
Yeah, I don't have to explain it. Just go. Yeah, let's go.
Maybe you want to get a sword. I got a hammer. Let's go.
Yeah, I got a hammer. Yeah, the still rowing joke. That's the most self-referential humor they've ever done, I think. At least it's in the top 3. So good. And damn, that is a huge hammer. Shay's going to pull up the shot here. I thought it was a little peculiar that there's a stag on there. I like that it has a stag on there from a design purpose, but it's a little, bold to put Robert's sigil on there like that.
I feel like they kind of went back and forth in that one scene. I thought about it a few other moments in the episode, talking about, questions about, I don't know about this. Because he even asked, aren't you worried? Gendry asked Davos, aren't you worried about the gold cloaks?
Yeah.
They're kind of pointing out that maybe there should be a concern for being recognized, and then he's got this stag on his hammer, so
it probably isn't that big a deal. I mean, I thought it was an odd detail, but if you think about it, I don't think it's too big a deal, because I mean, it was the Baratheon regime that Cersei is she's cloaked it all in Lannister crimson now, but it was
Davos is like, I haven't been here in years. Why would they recognize me? Okay, they explain it away, but still, you gotta explain it away, Yeah.
And as Ashea pointed out, by the way, shout out to Ashea running our new microphone and everything, our new audio setup, and keeping things together as always. But she pointed out that it's not like Gendry was using that hammer. It's not like it was his blacksmith hammer. It's just sitting in a corner. Sure. He doesn't even have to say. If he was really pressed on it, he could say, "Yeah, it's not even mine. I got it from there, and I just
You could definitely make sense of it, but he is about to walk through King's Landing, holding it out and with no cover.
So we had a funny moment. That there's 2 gold cloaks. They got killed. They got their faces pounded in, their head and face pounded in. One of those was the same actor who played Ned Stark in the Braavosi play, The Bloody Hand. That goofy, what's that mean? What's that mean? That one. That's the same actor. So shout out to him. Kevin Eldon is his name. And thanks to @Headbones on Twitter who pointed that out to us. I love. So again, we briefly talked about this already. Davos's handling of the smugglers, and I loved the fermented crab. That's just really funny.
I gotta give me some of that.
Yeah, right. And then, not long after, we get Jon and Gendry together, and their conversation is great because they've really bonded quickly. And despite Davos telling him not what to say, Gendry had the right of it. Jon respects the straightforward honesty. And you could see when he said, you're shorter. And then Gendry kind of like realized, wait, I just insulted you. And Jon just like kind of smiled like, I like this guy.
Which is very similar to Ned and Robert. When Robert said you got old, Ned's like, you got fat. And and everyone's like, you can't say that to the king. It's like, oh, and they laugh and hug.
Yeah, it's so good. It's definitely a throwback. It's a total nostalgia moment, and it was awesome. But there's the subtext because he says, I heard they were great friends. And then Gendry says, I heard they fought together. Well, in reality, they fought against each other. Because
depending on who they're...
Depending on who you're talking about. Yeah, obviously Ned and Robert fought together. But Rhaegar, being Jon's real father, is actually, Gendry, your father killed Jon's father. But let's not talk about that.
Put a pin in that.
Now, Gendry notices Jon's sword. He's like, with a sword like that, you don't need a blacksmith. Now, some people are wondering why Jorah didn't notice his sword. This is actually an easy explanation. It's a two-part explanation. The first part is the slam dunk. The second part maybe gives it a little more context. It's got a different hilt. When Jorah gave it away, when he left it behind at Bear Island, it had a bear's head hilt. And when it was remade for Jon, it now has this very distinct wolf head hilt. So I don't think that necessarily he would recognize it. Also, that sword is tied to Jorah's shame. He doesn't really like if he sees Jon draw, he'd be like, yeah, that sword looks familiar. And he's like, yeah, I got it from your father. And he's like, never mind.
There's another explanation. Gendry's an actual blacksmith. He probably has an eye for swords in the first place.
100%.
He probably checks out every sword he sees, thinks about the quality behind it, where they got it from, who the blacksmith might have been, what technique was used. You can imagine that's just part of his character. Jorah's not necessarily checking out everyone's sword, but it makes sense Gendry would be.
Also, and Jorah just, like Iron Throne here says, is like he's not looking around for the long cry. It wouldn't even occur to him.
Yeah.
But like I said, if Jon ever draws it, he might recognize that part of it. He might be like, that sword, the blade is maybe pretty distinct. He certainly recognizes Valyrian steel. That might make him curious. But
also, it's to how old that memory be? 10 years?
It's a while.
20 years?
Not that long.
Yeah.
No, because Jorah fought in Balon's rebellion, which was 10 years before where we are now. Okay, questions from Lady of Waves. Can we talk about the bromance for the ages? Jon and Gendry forever. Oh, the songs the singers will give us. The Wolf and the Hammer. But it was great to see the sons, in quotes, of Ned and Robert coming together. I imagine it was much like Ned and Robert's first meeting. Yeah, I kind of feel that way too. Yeah, because they got along the way they got along. They met at the Vale when they were both fostered with Jon Arryn, and yeah, I bet. I wonder if Robert appreciated Ned's quiet bluntness, quiet honesty, kind of like how Gendry's Jon is sort of the same way. Yeah, so it's just great. Okay, question from Lord Mark of House Joseph. I almost said Lord Mark House Joseph. How do you feel about how D&D handled Gendry coming back? I truly applaud them for how they handled it. I think that's exactly how Bobby B's bastard boy would act and feel after spending a couple of years making weapons for the family that killed his father. I also think that Jon just found someone he can truly count on to have his back, and I love it. I expect Gendry will be safe for quite a while, yet meaning more than just Jon will survive this expedition. You don't bring Gendry back and make him a badass to kill him in the next episode. Well, I agree with all of that except the last part. They have done exactly that. Brought people back or introduced them only to have them killed. The Red Viper is the most prominent example. I mean, this would be a much quicker turnaround on him dying.
They might wait 2 episodes.
But I do not share your confidence for Gendry's outlook, but I hope you're right. I would love to be wrong, but yeah, I'm worried about Gendry.
I think if he does survive, I think there's a plot line to put him in charge of the Stormlands.
Yeah.
But I think... I don't know. I'm going to say 50-50. That's where I'm at right now.
As I said, we often do our Worry of the Week segment. Sometimes we do it in both Monday and Wednesday. Sometimes we do it Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Sometimes we do it twice. Sometimes we do it none of the week. Last week there wasn't as much to say. We were all kind of like, yeah, Randall, Dickon, maybe Jamie, Bronn. That was about it. Now it's like, well, all the Magnificent Seven there, plus the red shirt wildlings that are with them, everyone except Jon is like,
maybe even Jon.
Yeah,
Jon might get killed and get brought back.
Okay,
that's a possibility.
You're right. I mean, to me that's not worried about his. As long as he's around. Still,
I don't think he'll be removed from the show, but he might be removed from the show for a couple episodes.
Yeah. That's really So I'm worried about Yeah, I think and 50-50 is a good call because I think about that. Pretty much everyone in that group, maybe you could say it's about a 50-50 chance to survive, maybe roughly in that. Never tell.
I assume we're going to talk about that more later.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Never tell me the odds. Let's talk about Jon and Jorah. Just so many meetings and some of these, like Jon and Jorah isn't a reunion, but it is a big meeting because they know of each other and there's some things they have in common, like the sword and Daenerys, and these other things. Speaking of, Jorah is another one that very much reason to worry about him. They bring him back, and he's now in the fold, and then he leaves again. So, yeah, I think Jorah may have some jealousy for Jon that may or may not, that's already there, maybe now already, and maybe could build if given time. But he was also caught off guard by Jon immediately just saying, how much respect he had for Jorah's father. That was kind of like, it's hard to be angry when someone's saying that,
Again, I haven't watched it 3 times. You have new thoughts come in. And that third time, I was putting myself in Jorah's shoes. Just imagine a scenario. He's walking up. He's returned after all this time to Dany. She's out there with some other dude. Who's this dude? You know what I mean? Like, imagine what would be going through Jorah's head. Mm-hmm. And when he gets introduced, Jorah probably isn't like, oh, it's just Jon Snow. He's probably like, what is it? Okay, Jon Snow, what is he doing here? What's going on exactly? How long have they been together? Are they together?
Lady Arisand wants to know, do you think Jorah noticed the vibe building between Jon and Dany? Yes, 100% he noticed that. And Jon noticed a little bit of Jorah and Dany's vibe, too. He was a little curious what was happening there.
They hugged. Like, that's out of character.
There's hand kissing and all that, yeah.
Generally speaking, a king or a queen, they're reserved. It's usually their role is to not be particularly emotional, much less affectionate. Usually emotion is anger, right? Mm-hmm. And in Dany, also, her personality is somewhat reserved, too. And
yes.
Jon might expect Jorah Mormont to be reserved. And here they go hugging in front of these Dothrakis and this Jon Snow character. They just hug each other. So clear, not only that they have a close relationship, but they're not embarrassed about it at all either.
Also, it's funny to note, I think, that Jorah arrives back at Dragonstone right when there's this proposed armistice, right when Dany no longer seems to need generals. So she really needed good generals, and now that she's in an armistice, so it's almost tragic for Jorah because it's like, hey, you could have been used as an advisor, but now that there's this other thing going on, time for you to go with this dangerous mission to the north instead. Of course, he volunteered, to be fair, but still, yeah.
There's a couple lines of thought that my mind had been on this episode was just out the window. I was like thinking about how Dany's lost big segments of her army, but she's picking up new military advisors. Davos showed up. Jorah's on the way. They all left. All the military advisors left. We had all these thoughts about how Jaime and Bronn were going to be taken prisoner and go have this meeting at Dragonstone. No, they're just downriver.
Well, to be fair to that, one of the things we really predicted with Jaime and Bronn was like, it gives them the ability to have Tyrion talk to them. That still happened. Yeah. So that was the thing that we were like, we were thinking, how can they miss this opportunity to do this? And they didn't. They just did it in a very different way that maybe makes less sense logistically, but was still very satisfying from a character perspective. Because that Jaime Tyrion scene was awesome. But first off, we have Dany and Jorah, very emotional, and they hardly get any time together before they're split up again. But it was great acting on both sides, a lot of emotion in both their faces, really genuine, I thought. And Jorah and Tyrion, that was a nice moment too, a little nostalgia, even though it wasn't even that long ago. That was like, season 5? Yeah, when they were together as with the slaver, and gives him the coin.
Season 5 was forever ago. That was forever ago.
Bring the coin back. He says, that was nice. That was a nice touch. I forgot about the coin. It's a very small detail of many. It's amazing that Tyrion still had that coin, but this isn't one of those logistical things, like amazing that he still has it, but yeah, why wouldn't he still have it, actually, come to think of it? Okay, of course, Super Chat is, of course, available if you want to get in there with that, but we are about to move on to another big topic coming out of a location with the fewest main characters, and now no main characters, now that they've left at the end of the episode, and that is the Citadel. Okay, so I want to start off by giving another shout out to our good buddy Poor Quentin, aka Emmett Booth, who's tweeted yesterday, it's cathartic to see Sam remind the Archmaesters how powerful they are while reminding them how impotent they're being. He's like, look how much power you have, and you guys are just sitting here making fun of things and talking about boring stuff, like do stuff, do things, get involved. There's a war happening, it's even bigger than you realize because of the Night's King and all this other stuff that Sam is, hesitant to bring up until he gets angry at this point, and then he's like really pushing the issue. So yeah, check out poor Quentin he's writing for Deadspin these days.
That's another thing I particularly liked here. Watching it 3 times, thinking about things in new ways. I was drawing a parallel between Ebros, I'm not quite sure how to say that maester's name, and Sansa. Like, here goes Sam in front. There's like a meeting of all these leaders, right? And here's Sam just butting in and challenging the leaders, like, no, this is what you need to do. No, you're not listening to me. No, this is what you need to do. He can't be like, okay, dude from nowhere that just got here, I'll just do whatever you say. Leaders, go do whatever you know what I mean? And you could see it in him. If you watch it again, you see him like recognizing Sam is right. Or is at least worth listening to.
Yeah.
He wants to take
action.
action.
Yeah, I was going to shut him down.
Right,
yeah.
and he even does say, I promise you. But all the leaders are like, oh, this silly nonsense. These guys in the north. And I think that's not far from how Sansa, her scene, where these people are like, he's got to manage them a certain way. He can't just chop off their heads. He can't boss them around. He understands their personalities and their dynamics and his role as a leader. He's got to listen to their complaints.
Yes.
He's still going to do the right thing in the end, but there's a certain way to lead. Or there's many different ways to lead. And Sansa and Ebros have their way, and Cersei has her way.
Absolutely, yeah. I like the balance in that scene, as there were some of the maesters were just, you need more scribing to sharpen your mind. That was the most silly comment, like, come on, dude. That guy is like the example of the Ivory Tower academic who is just oblivious to what's happening in the world and just won't believe anything that doesn't fit in his worldview. And meanwhile, Ebros is a lot more open-minded, but he still, that was a pretty valid, like, counter-argument. When he said, maybe this is the Dragon Queen. I mean, it's not. He's wrong. It's not. We all know he's wrong.
We know that, but they don't know that.
But it's like maybe the Dragon Queen is trying to get troops to go north. Like, that's possible.
And also, even if they weren't trying to do that, Cersei might take advantage of that, or someone might take advantage of that, even if it wasn't the intent. Even if this is true that there's this threat in the north, so on and so on, there's still concerns that come with that. So
yeah, absolutely.
By the way, I don't want to get too political here, but the idea has been planted in my mind. I'm sure many people have considered the potential symbolic parallel to the Night King and winter coming to environmental concerns in the real world. And I really couldn't stop seeing it in this scene, and I wonder if they're deciding to latch onto that, or if that's just me coming to terms with it.
No, people have asked George about that a lot. That's been people have brought that up.
And same thing, I will say, same thing, people who argue against it, even if they're wrong, there are legitimate concerns, like some of the things we might want to do to protect our environment or whatever have a cost. They'll require us to not have as good a transportation, or to spend more money, or to change our infrastructure. Or, not that we shouldn't do it, but it's a difficult decision to make, and there's going to be people on both sides. And again, I don't want to be too political here, but I do appreciate when media has a meaning beyond entertainment, when there is some real world takeaways and understandings and insights for us to get. And I'm starting to realize how much there is with not only the idea of winter coming and what the Night King might represent, but also how the maesters are dealing with it and how the leaders are dealing with it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and it's a parallel. There's a bit of a parallel because you see how the maesters in the south are dealing with it, and then you see like how someone like Tormund, who's like, which queen? How many queens are there now? Like, he has no idea. Like, he has no idea what's going on in the south. Well, he has some idea, just like the maesters are like a little off there. All right, we got a couple super chats here to catch up on. First of all, from Jody Collins. Thank you, Jody. Thank you all. Love listening to you get me through the week. Question: do you think Jon will have to lose Ghost before he can become a dragon rider? Never thought about it that way, because Ghost is just such a small part of everything. And we get a little self-referential humor there with Sansa there. It's like, you can't just tell him to sit and stay like Ghost.
Yeah, that was a good point. That was good.
Funny.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I do not think he has to get roast. What is this?
Get roast?
What is it? Get rid of Ghost.
You really abbreviated that there, yeah.
It's Freudian slip. Did I really say get roast?
Yes.
I don't think he has to get rid of Ghost. What is the name of this whole series?
Yeah,
Song of Ice and Fire. Not a Song of Ice or Fire. You can have both. Jon can have both. He is Ice and Fire. He can have Ghost and Rhaegon, or one of the dragons.
Rhaegal. Okay, and another one from Franz here. 5 super chat here. Thank you very much. How and when will the info Gilly read about Rhaegar and Lyanna reach Jon? That is a good segue. We were about to talk about that exact thing just after one or two other little tidbits regarding Sam and Gilly. So good timing. I thought that Sam leaving, getting frustrated and leaving, was a lot like Jon. Like, rather than taking the time to convince them and take a little more effort to kind of bring them over to his side, he just gets frustrated and leaves, which is kind of like what Jon was ready to do when he couldn't get Dany on his side until Tyrion's like, hey, this is it's the same thing. This is an unreasonable request. Yeah. He's literally asking them to send their soldiers north. It's like, you can just, right? Every lord comes like, that is exactly what Tyrion said. That is an unreasonable request.
Yeah.
And
I will say, to give Sam some credit, he didn't just now suddenly get frustrated and leave.
You're right.
He spent some time in the shit, right?
Literally, yes. That's a good point. And and he doesn't know, like they say, the one like kind of moment of humility or like goodness from that one crappy maester is like, he's the one whose father and brother were just burned alive, weren't they? And it's like, awful business. Yeah, so they showed some humanity there, which was good. But yeah, that is rough. Like, Sam hasn't learned that yet. Apparently he's still out not learning that.
I think there's a couple other things to take in here. One is that line is important for us to get, knowing that Sam doesn't know this yet. It means he's going to find out at some point. There's going to be some meaning to that. But also, it might be meaningful. Sam leaving in and of itself might be meaningful to Ebrose and or some of the other maesters. The fact that he believed in this much, he just took off.
Mm-hmm.
That he's not just...
You wonder if it's going to be... There's no brothers to bring him back, like when Jon left the wall.
Yeah.
Of course, he's...
A bunch of dudes in cloaks running, tackling onto the ground.
Yeah, Archmaesters are just running after him. There'll be like previews of the next episodes, like Archmaesters just running really fast. Like, what is going on here? And, so there was the quote that he says... he quotes his own father, like, I'm tired of reading about the achievements of better men. So we'll see where he goes. We'll talk more about where he might go and how this might play out. And he's probably just going north. But
might go to Dragonstone.
Yeah, he may go elsewhere. He may have stops up in the midtime. We'll talk about that more on Saturday.
Go home. His home's not far. It's on the way pretty much. Yeah, wherever he goes.
Comfort his family now that after we learned what happened. Now backing up a little bit to the.
Oh, sorry. The more I think about it, wherever he goes, is he going to take Gilly and Sam Jr. with him?
They're with him so far.
They are, yeah. But they're having.
Are they really going to go to the wall? Is he really going to take them to the wall?
Yeah. I wonder if he'll drop them off at home.
Drop them off at home. Yeah. That's a good point. Okay, so what's funny here is that there were a lot of false alarms in the trailers from earlier in the season, like a lot of stuff with Littlefinger, for example. That dagger, that wasn't that turned out to be very little. The Lyanna statue, that's gonna be that wasn't much. But this mundane shot that we showed on Saturday, I don't mean to have it come up again. Just it was a mundane shot from the stills of this episode that just showed Sam and Gilly looking at books. And who could have? And we were like, well, I wonder what they're going to find out. Maybe something important. But who could have known it would be this? Like, this is not something we saw coming. Here's a question from Bok Bok, Lord of the Chicken Dance. How did you all feel when the not-so-subtle reveal of the annulment of Rhaegar, followed by the interruption when something important is said trope? Yeah, that was certainly, especially because in A Feast for Crows, Jon does that to Sam. Sam is like, oh, blah, 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 and this happened, and Jon just says, long ago. He doesn't want to hear the rest of it. He's like, I'm done with this. And it's like, no, let him finish. That was an ancient book he's reading. Let him read that. So this is kind of what happened here, because Gilly just stumbles on this huge factoid, and Sam doesn't realize it because she mispronounces it wrong, or she mispronounces it, and, and then everyone's like, wait, but, so...
I remember when I was a kid... I would be so intrigued by the idea of a character in a book, reading a book. I wanted to read that book. I want to know
Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, so let's clarify what was said and done in the scene, because there is some confusion about it. And this is really important. In order to judge it, we have to make sure we have our facts straight. For what was said is that the High Septon did this annulment for Rhaegar and then performed a secret marriage, and that this all happened in Dorne. So there's a couple odd things about that. First of all, in the book, there's the High Septon resides in Old Town. In the show, they've got him in they used to reside in Old Town, and now they have him at King's Landing. And of course, now the Great Sept is destroyed, so it's all kind of up in the air right now. But the High Septon doing this marriage and annulment in Dorne is a little odd. Performing that's unusual. I mean, not odd, like logistically weird. Like, I wonder not only did they convince the High Septon to do this, which is unusual because Rhaegar had 2 children. An annulment when you have 2 children is very odd. So, A, how did he convince the High Septon to do this? B, how did he convince him to do it in Dorne? He had to travel there, presumably. C, then there's all the why and all this, like, what else is going on, what's in their minds and all that. Of course, there's some, you could kind of see how Rhaegar as crown prince, could be like, look, do this for me, and I'll do this in exchange for you, or do this for me because it's really important, because, my father needs to be overthrown, and, because Rhaegar was, moving to force his father to abdicate. There's a lot of clues that was happening. Like, he was aware of his father's madness. He maybe acted too slowly, but he was aware. And to be fair, when war broke out, when Aerys' reaction, okay, so Aerys was a madman, right? Everybody knows that. But it's easy to forget that this wasn't his normal MO. Sure, he burned people. He burned a few people, but he hadn't really burned high lords and their heirs before. This was a whole nother level of him going off. And so Rhaegar, it's fair to say Rhaegar did a lot wrong and caused a lot of this, but no one could have seen even a madman like Aerys reacting the way he did. It's really kind of surprising, especially, and of course Brandon Stark comes in and kicks the beehive, is like, come out and die, Rhaegar. That's literal treason, and you're saying that to a madman. Like, maybe you should have had a different approach there, Brandon. So a lot of people, not getting into the blame game, a lot of reasons with why the rebellion broke out, and a lot of people share responsibility. That's not really the point. The point is, this change, this makes Jon legitimate, yet we don't know for sure that this can ever be, where is this information now? Is it still at the Citadel? You noticed, at first when I saw the scene, I thought Sam grabbed the book and gave it to little Sam, and so they took it with them. But then you pointed out, no, that's wrong, that was a different book. And I double-checked, you were totally right. So we don't know if they even took that book with. We don't know if Gilly has it. So it's really hard to make this judgment. However, if he copied this book already, then it is there at the Citadel. So maybe the Archmaesters can find it later, and that might be relevant. But right now, it's just it seems like it was just for us, just for the viewers.
It seems a little less likely for him to have copied it, because remember, Gilly's reading it and asking him questions about it. How many windows? How many steps?
He would have already known.
If he had just read it and copied it down, he might have remembered that.
So yeah, you're right. He probably hadn't copied that book yet. So yeah, I don't.
She might have still taken it because she thought it was interesting.
Well, we're getting close to 1,000. We got around 850, and if we get to 1,000, we get to dancing, folks. Call your friends. All we need is around 150 more to get that fourth. We get that fourth digit. We get that comma. That's what we need. We need that comma.
Don't throw me in the briar patch. No, don't. 1,000. Oh no. So I have a couple thoughts, by the way. I wonder. We knew who did the ceremony, right?
Yes, his name is High Septon. It started with an M.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
go ahead and I'll come up with the name. In the books, they don't have names. In the books, they give up their names. Maynard. It was High Septon Maynard. Okay. In the books, they're just the High Septon.
From where he's from, or where he was. Like, did he go from King's Landing to Dorne to this ceremony, or was he in Dorne in the first place?
He wouldn't have been in Dorne in the first place. No. We don't know that he was definitely in King's Landing, but he should have been. That's where that's where the Great Sept of Baelor is. He would either be there or in Old Town, which is neither of those are in Dorne.
I was supposing maybe they went to Dorne because that's where they knew they could get the annulment done. Dorne's more liberal about how marriage and relationships work in the first place.
It's possible Maynard is from it's from Dorne. There's no way. That name doesn't give us a clue to what region he's from. The only Maynard we know of in the series is Maynard Plum, and Maynard Plum was that's a Westerland's house, but Maynard Plum wasn't really Maynard Plum. He was Bloodraven in disguise. So that doesn't really tell us anything. Although if he chose a Westerland's name, that would make sense. He would fit in. So Maynard. So in a Westerland, there's no Westerland's names really. They're just Westerland's names are just end-all names basically. So they're just, that doesn't tell us much, unfortunately. So there's a lot more to go with this, but it doesn't. We may not get any more, in the meantime. We may maybe we get the rest through Bran, or I don't know. I don't know where we're going to get more information on this, but maybe if they have the book with them, that makes it a lot easier to kind of see where they might go with that. So in the meantime, the other big question here is, how does annulment work in Westeros? We don't know. It's not even super clear in the real world, because depends on what country you're in and where you live and all these other things. Like currently the Catholic religion, you can have an annulment after you have children under certain circumstances, but those kids don't become bastards after the fact. They're still legitimate. The Catholic Church considers them legitimate. Obviously, the Catholic Church is not the be-all, end-all here. And it's just one example from the real world.
It's
and there's
precedent to base something on.
So we don't know what Westeros's annulment rules are. So we just really can't say whether by having this annulment, it set aside his other kids. Like, they were removed from the line of succession, which would be huge. But in the show, they're both dead, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Like, so it's Jon either way. It's just a matter of whether he's legitimate and whether that can be proven. So it sets that up, but it's still kind of hard to see how that will happen.
It's something to think about, particularly, by the way, in addition to the idea that, Jon's the one true king, and, and that might lead to thoughts about, well, how will Dany respond to this? Like, is she, like, her motivation ostensibly is it's hers, kind of like Stannis, right?
Yeah.
Well, if it's demonstrated that it's not hers, to some extent, possession is 9/10 of the law. But so far, Dany doesn't even have possession of the throne yet anyway, so if it did become clear to her that it should be Jon, I don't know how likely that is, but would she be like, oh, okay, all right, it should be Jon, I'll kneel to you? I can imagine Jon be like, you should really kneel to me now. You're like, but also, think about how Dany might feel about some of her actions so far, just like how Melisandre might feel about some of her actions so far. Going on this idea, this commitment on this thing that you just know, and you're willing to kill and burn people over it, and then you find out, oh, I was wrong. How much guilt would Dany have over burning Randall Tarley for not bending the knee to her when he shouldn't have bent the knee to her,
Yeah, it's really tricky. Yeah, it really is. I mean, Randall was right. Randall's speech was good. I know we're kind of backing up a little. Randall's speech was really good. He pointed out, he's like, look, there's no easy choices in war. And what he's basically saying there is, I'm going to be a traitor no matter which side I pick. And that's what Jaime pointed out to him, and he was right. So, yeah, it was rough.
It was a powerful moment, and I liked the line. I thought in my head and tweeted, and then Randall said, there are no tough choices. There are no easy choices in war.
Yeah, definitely. Super chat from Miguel Vargas, who says, hi guys, keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Miguel. We will certainly try to do that. All right. Unless we have more questions, we will certainly have more to say on Rhaegar and all this stuff in the book to show. It obviously has big implications there as well, possibly bigger implications there, although possibly this isn't accurate to the book. So that's part of why it's a big discussion. And also, we'll probably have more thoughts as we have more time to think about it, as no doubt you all will probably have your thoughts evolve as the week rolls by as well. So let's go to Team Lannister. Yeah, so, Jaime and Bronn getting out of the river. It wasn't my favorite resolution to that plot, but, again, I'm really just kind of past criticizing the show's logistics. Not that they don't have plenty of logistical flaws. I'm just like, yeah, they do this all the time. Like, what's the point in pointing it out? They're going to keep doing it, and if you just get bogged down in that, it just distracts you from the good stuff. And I'd rather just focus on the good stuff and just kind of say, yeah, the logistics often stink. Let's focus on the acting and the dialogue and all this other good stuff. So
I will say I felt a little better about it than I would have. I saw someone post a cross-section image of, like, real world lakes and rivers, where they have, like, shallow water that suddenly has a sharp drop-off. That sometimes even...
It was a river, too, so it shouldn't have a flow.
It cuts back in the other direction. And the reason for that is because the flow of water is, like, tunneling out the soil on the side, but the surface part that's there is there because it's sturdier, right? And so it just has a cross-section, someone, like, superimposed Jaime, like, down underneath with the horse above it, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes perfect sense.
I'm glad you took a look at that, because I pointed that out. I was like, I don't know if we should judge this that harshly. I mean, I judged the scene harshly, like the last minute rescue and the fake sinking, which we knew was false cliffhanger. But the whole depth of the water thing, I was like, I don't know, I'm not going to comment on that, because I'm you looked it up, it was counterintuitive.
Yeah. Just to be fair, I didn't look it up, someone posted it.
Okay,
I'll dig that up and I'll post it up somewhere for other people to see.
Anyway, the one thing that might be a flaw here, though, is how does Tyrion even know that Jaime got to King's Landing?
Yeah. Well, it's also, by the way, it's still a flaw that all the armor would still weigh. That's still a problem. Maybe Bronn is a master swimmer, greater than anyone that's ever lived. Plus the current of the water. I don't know. But
it's got its rough. It's got some rough edges there. That explanation. But if we get to Jaime and Tyrion meeting, this was awesome. I mean, setting logistics aside of how this even happened, I think this makes more sense than some of the other stuff, because Tyrion knows those tunnels. He was Hand of the King, and remember Arya just walked out a drainage tunnel outside of the castle and was just out there by the shore. So maybe Tyrion took the same route. So that I can, like, some people are like, he just walked right in there. Like, yeah, actually that's okay. He didn't go in the city. He probably just walked through the secret passage.
It's also a spot that Davos knew. The smuggler knew what spot he was dropping them off at. So it was really good acting. You could see that Jaime was really mad, but Tyrion's argument was having an effect and making Jaime
split. Like you could see, like he kept bowing his head because he was angry, but he was also like, "You have a point here." He was like, when Tyrion says he was going to kill me and he knew I was innocent. What the hell do you think? You cannot blame me for this. He's the one at fault. It's our father caused this. It was him or me. You know?
Yeah. Just so you know, I don't necessarily think that Jaime was angry and Tyrion had him coming around. I think that Jaime knew both sides in the first place. I know that for myself, and I believe for most people, that when you say something out loud, it helps like clarify or even resolve an emotion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You could be torn internally on something. You're mad about this thing, but you understand why it happened. And you might stew about it at night for weeks or your whole life. But if you get to confront the source of the anger and get it out, then after that, it's resolved, and now your understandings of the reason why are what you were left with in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time Jaime got to express the anger he had there. I think he did understand the other side to this, but still had the anger, understandably, of Tyrion having killed their father, right? And now that he gets to tell Tyrion he's mad about it, it's off his chest, and he can just have the leftover, more positive emotions. You know?
Yeah. And you said that you thought maybe this was a personal moment for Peter Dinklage here.
Yeah, think about what he's saying. And that when
in real life, he's had to have gone through some of these things.
Like as an actor, having to read these lines, do you think I wanted to be born like this? Is this, you think I chose this,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen him in some other movies, and one of the movies is the Station Agent, where this absolutely happens. He, he's at one point, he's in a bar, and he's drinking by himself, and then he just starts ranting. Yeah, look at me, blah, 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 just, I'm a spectacle or whatever, and he just, kind of just loses it, and you could really tell, it's like, man, this is him channeling his own experiences. It was so, I mean, he's such a good actor that he doesn't need that, but he probably can draw on that,
That might be part of why he's such a good actor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but on the other side here, okay, so Shay's gonna pull up this cool image. I love this dragon skull. This is a still, it's just awesome. I love the skulls. I'm glad we get to see them again. And it maybe gives a little bit of a Tyrion dragon hint there, just with that. But I love the detail. You can still see the hole in the skull.
There's also a little bit of them being surrounded by dragons.
Yeah, that's true. They're both amidst dragons. Yeah, that's really cool. But I think this is just a really bad plan. I think this plan stinks. I'm not even talking about the go capture a white thing, which is kind of awkward too. But he's basically relying on trusting Jaime, not because and to Jaime to control Cersei, which is two leaps of faith.
Yeah.
Jaime he can rely on to keep the peace. That I think is accurate. I think Jaime's word with Tyrion is solid. But Jaime and Cersei's relationship has never been more unequal than it has been now. Cersei is running things. She does not, and she's not going to listen to Jaime. She's already we got to be clever. Let's take advantage of the armistice. That's basically what she was saying. So Tyrion, I can't understand why Tyrion is trusting Cersei here. It might be his own weakness towards his own family.
It could be a lot of things. I do like that you point out that there's a lot of layers to trust. Usually you think of trust as being, that someone won't lie to you or something like that, right? But there's also, you have to have a certain trust in someone's competency. Someone might just screw something up, even if they're being honest about it, or not have the ability to accomplish something, even if they aren't screwing it up. They don't necessarily have the right resources or the people to cooperate with them. And so Tyrion has a lot to trust from Jaime here, beyond just his honor or his word, right? Now, here's another reason they might go with this plan that I wish they would just say this out loud and make me feel better about it, but in my mind I can understand that even if they can't convince Cersei by capturing one of these whites, which also assumes that the idea of capturing a white isn't too harebrained, but they'll convince other people, right? On the way down to King's Landing, they can stop off at every major house and be like, here's a zombie, we need your help up north, there's a bunch more of these. They get to King's Landing and they show Cersei, and she's like, oh, get out of here with your parlor tricks. But some other person in court, some of those other lords, are probably shaky whether or not they support Cersei in the first place, right? They're kind of I guess I better, but they maybe aren't really wanting to. And when they have another thing, a cause to care about, and some of them might be convinced, so how many of them might be a little superstitious or curious in the first place and seeing this evidence might. And in addition to gaining support by having this evidence, aside from Cersei, that support might pull away from Cersei. People who were supporting Cersei are now going to help.
True.
So I think there's a lot of value to it, and even if it's maybe harebrained to get the white, and maybe a lot to trust Jaime to get this, to his part in this plan, getting Cersei on board or whatever, the risk reward is pretty high. it's not like there's some other better plan that they're like, nah, we don't want to do that. Let's do this instead. This is just the best thing they came up with.
I like the idea that they don't have time to work everything out before having to solve it. That's cool because like if just like they were able to solve the South and then go face the North, yeah, that would be just too simple and clean. Super chat from Patrick Barrett. How do you feel about Qyburn as Hand of the Queen, and how do you think the Citadel would feel about it? The Citadel's got to be very unhappy with that. Yeah, like he was rejected. He was kicked out of their order. I mean, at least he's not the Grand Maester. That would bother them more because he's in one of their titles in a different role. I'm sure they still hate it, but it's probably maybe a little bit less offensive because it's not, he's not being assigned a title within their order. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. But about Hand of the Queen, I mean, he's really clever. And he's obviously effective, and he's an example of why Cersei is still doing pretty well, why she's still in the game, and while she has a lot going for her, even though she just lost her army and all these other things. And that's because, this is something pointed out behind the episode, that she's ruthless, and so is Qyburn. And so when you have less moral qualms, you have more options.
Yeah.
And when you know your opponent has moral qualms, there's certain things they won't do, and you're like, well, I can do that, and they won't. So they can't match me on this. So that's what I think we're worried about with Jaime and Cersei. And Qyburn is right in line with that because Qyburn is just helping her with these, how can we take advantage of this armistice? One thing I thought was really interesting is, Jaime was like, hey, why were you meeting with Qyburn there, like that? And she's like, he's Hand of the King. Why are you here? But that was 2 times that Jaime goes to see Cersei. Both times Qyburn was just leaving.
Yeah, one of them, I don't know if you saw it, put in a document.
I did see that, yeah.
Kim Renfro pointed out that there's a line of dialogue. You barely hear it as Jaime's entering the room. Qyburn says, I could give you something. And Cersei says, that won't be necessary.
So they're talking about pregnancy,
probably. Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool. But as far as their plans, Jaime is like, we can't win. And Cersei's like, so what? If we surrender, we're dead anyway. Like, we have to try. It doesn't matter if we can't win. Our options are still the same. It doesn't matter the outlook, and that's a good point. Now, I wonder. I'm a little bit worried about Bronn, not too much, because Cersei's like, he betrayed you. He set up this meeting without your consent. Blah blah blah. If I was Jaime, I'd be like, that's not betrayal. That's insubordination or something like that. That's like that. I wouldn't go. That's not treason. He didn't cause any harm.
Cersei will feel this way. This is a threat to her power. The idea that there's another person out there that's a player, if you will.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? She doesn't. You could see her concern about Bronn, what he might do if he would do this. But I feel like Jaime would just. Jaime, I think, is thankful that Bronn did this. You know? And it just like Tyrion said, like, I had to meet you, but I knew you wouldn't agree to it. Bronn knew the same thing. Jaime knows that they know that and is happy that they did this. He recognizes that he wouldn't have and needed to.
Yeah.
But I can't help but wonder if it's foreshadowing. It reminds me of another bit that happened earlier that I wonder is foreshadowing. Bronn told Jaime, only I can kill you.
Yeah.
You can't kill you. Only me. I wonder if that's something that might happen, if they might get pitted against each other at some point.
I'm confused about where Bronn is right now. He's on one hand, he's like, you owe me a castle. On the other hand, he's like, I'm not doing this because of dragons. So I'm like, I'm not really sure where he's at these days. I'm not sure what his, it'll be interesting to see where that resolves. We got a couple super chats here. Let's see. First of all, from Jax Frankovich. D&D dropping Children of the Forest hints. What is the Night King's goal? He made deals with men before. And will we see him make other deals with men to get revenge on the Children of the Forest? Maybe he's like, that's something that's been talked about in, like, a book theory for a long time, is who he might deal with. One theory was Roose Bolton. That clearly didn't happen, but I never really agreed with that theory. It was interesting and possible, but clearly not likely now.
I'm really hoping for it, and I've started to dig a little bit more into the prophecy and some of the history there, because I'm so intrigued by what the Night King's motivation is, and I cannot wait. I'm so hoping he speaks. I want to hear him speak, whether it's to Jon or Bran or whoever.
They have a language, but it's it's a different language. It's called Scroth, I believe, and they don't.
I just know that
work the same way.
I know, Martin. We all know. Just look at this show. There just aren't just these plain bad guys. No one's just this one-sided. There's got to be more to him. There's just has to be. And I'm sure it's going to be rich and intriguing. And up to now, the mystery surrounding him, adds to the epic feel, the menacing nature, the suspense and everything. But eventually, we're going to have some climactic moment, some confrontation, and I really want him to speak, and I hope the speech isn't, "You all must die." I hope he says something like, "You betrayed my people, you broke the ancient contract," or, I wanted to hear him give some reasoning and some motivation, which might generate new dilemmas, like it might pit Jon against Dany or something like that. That's what I'm really hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, for example, like saying Sam is maybe pitted against Dany now after what was done to his family. But maybe not, because he didn't exactly like his father.
Yeah.
Much, maybe he understands. Anyway, we got another super chat from Amanda Mitchell. It says, could Euron be the father of Cersei's unborn child? It seemed to be Jaime's worry as well. Well, let's talk about that. First, before we do that, though, let's talk about the reveal about Olenna. That's because that was the build-up to that, And O'Shea is pulling up this image here. This is Cersei's face as she realizes Jaime's right. The way he's supposed to, like, if you were Olenna, would you want Marjorie married to Joffrey or Tommen? And then you would be able to, like, who's more, manageable? Who's going to let him? And she's like, okay, you're right. And because you can tell she agrees, because she's like, I shouldn't have listened to you. I should have tortured her.
Yeah. I thought that was a good moment, too. And it kind of shows that, in my mind, I can't help but wonder if Cersei... It makes sense that she already has it out for Tyrion, and there are some reasons to suspect Tyrion, and in the moment she just wants to blame someone.
Yes.
And she probably at some point, somewhere in her mind, considered that maybe it wasn't Tyrion, but it doesn't matter. He killed my father anyway. He's a little prick anyway. I just want him out of the way,
Yeah.
But Jaime made it clear to her, and part of how he did it is by appealing to what he knew she would agree with, that Olenna was plotting against him. Yes. Does that make sense? And he can get the part of the argument that she already is on board with, and then just follow up. Think about it from there, So I thought it was well presented by him and well performed by Lena Headey. The reaction to it was really good.
Speaking of reactions, after she basically argues with Jaime a bit and then drops the bomb on him, she's pregnant, that totally changes Jaime's tune, and he kind of his voice gets softer, and he's like, well, who are you going to tell people it belongs to? And she's like, you. I'm going to say it's you. That's that, like, I don't, the lion doesn't concern itself with the opinions of the sheep. And we're like, well, what does the Euron's opinion mean here?
Yeah,
this
they
is
didn't
huge.
bring it up there, but I'm sure thinking about it.
Yeah, I do not think that's the father of Cersei's child. It's possible, but there's not even evidence they slept together. And it seemed like Cersei was holding that as a reward. Not the marriage was what she said, but the whole thing, like the sex and everything. Imagine that she was holding him at an arm's length to get what she wanted, and I just don't. I'm doubting that they slept together, because I didn't read Jaime's comment that way. I don't think Jaime was worried about who it belonged to. He said, "Who are you going to say it belongs to?"
Yeah,
which is a much different context.
There was a reaction in the community, if you will, that maybe she's just lying. It was my first instinct too.
It is possible.
When she first said it, I tell you, the thing that popped in my mind was Mindy Kaling in The Office.
Yeah.
Telling Ryan that he just was like blowing her off and
ignoring
her.
And she's
like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, what, really? And off screen, she's like, no,
but this thing, but Ken Renfro's grabbing that dialogue kind of means that it probably is real, right?
Well, I think that it is real. Yeah, that helps verify it even further. But I think also that's not something the writers would do. I don't think that Cersei needs to do that to keep Jaime on her side. I doubt that. I did question myself, maybe it is Euron's, but also kind of went through the same things you were saying. I don't think they slept together. I don't think she would do that, wouldn't have had time for it. Even if she had, still she's definitely slept with Jaime too, so it might be uncertain. But then going through all these thoughts, I was like, wait a minute. Euron is expecting this, and it's one thing to say Jaime's a father, but will they get married? Will that be a thing that happens? And
I imagine that's what she wants, but then then she can't marry Euron.
There's no way. Would Euron marry her? Would Euron be like, whatever, I'll raise someone else's kid? Would he be cool with that? I don't think he would, but maybe he would if he gets to be married to the queen and et cetera, et cetera. But if not, then what does happen to Euron? What does he do with his fleet? Does he turn against Cersei? Does Cersei anticipate this ahead of time and try to take him out? We still do have Yara out there and Theon on a mission to save her. And
Theon didn't even appear this episode.
Imagine if Jon is proving to the kingdom that there's a real threat. Would Euron believe in a threat? Would he want to join in the effort?
Good questions. From Matt Paparella, Super Chat. Thanks, Matt. Is the death of Cersei inevitable? My gut tells me that Jaime will be the one to kill her. However, her pregnancy has complicated things. Yeah, that really changes the whole calculus on how Cersei will end. I do think her death is inevitable. or at least her exile or losing everything is inevitable. But the idea of Jaime killing her now is maybe almost entirely out the window now.
Yeah.
It's almost entirely out the window. I mean,
unless the story is going to stretch out for a couple more years.
They have a time jump,
which maybe it will. Like if each of these episodes in next season are supposed to be an hour plus, maybe they're packing a lot in a year. A season possible. Will pass long enough for winter to be all the way down to Dorne or something.
Yeah. I will say, do not expect Cersei to die this season. I think the way they're setting things up, it doesn't even look. I mean, they could always surprise us, but it does not look like that'll happen.
I have seen people point out how many parallels there would be if Cersei died in childbirth, and maybe that is a thing that could happen.
In fact, we have a question here from Narlaws. What if Cersei dies in childbirth, giving birth to Jaime's child, and in effect being killed by Jaime anyway?
Some people said that would be Lyanna Stark, getting the revenge from the grave. Yeah.
Well, then we'd have to consider this new kid a dragon rider, right? No, just kidding. And we have a comment from Keelia Rose. Hope Cersei gives birth to a dwarf.
yeah, that'd be awesome. I genuinely think that'd be awesome. I don't know how they would ever have time to let that play out, but I think that'd be really awesome.
Yeah, it would be
a spin-off in the future.
Yeah.
A couple things that comment, just that word inevitability reminded me of a couple things I wanted to point out. One is a shorter, quicker thing. It was about Sam. I already lost what it was.
Well, you'll probably remember it. We'll come back because we're not talking about Sam right now, anyways.
But the inevitability was about when we were talking about how responsible Rhaegar might be, his actions, and da-da-da.
Yeah.
I think about this a lot because there is a certain inevitability to things. I got the thought from Carl Sagan. I've mentioned this a few times in the past how if Christopher Columbus didn't discover America, Europe was coming. You know what I mean? There were explorers who were coming across technology and sailing was, and when they did, it was probably inevitable that they're going to bring disease and slavery and so on. You can't go back in time and take out Christopher Columbus and you're not really going to change history that much, right?
Yeah,
so, Aerys is still the Mad King, right? If Sansa didn't tell Cersei about whatever, all these different people who might have done or not done certain things, if that one time when Arya's dog hadn't bitten Joffrey, then everything would have been fine. No, Joffrey's still a little punk
Joffrey would have found another way to...
Right, there's all this... Ned is still going to dig up who the Lannister kids are. These things were inevitable. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The problems that stirred up in King's Landing were going to happen anyway. The problems with Aerys was going to happen anyway. If Rhaegar had just stayed married and didn't have this affair and all this other stuff, there was still going to be this showdown,
Yeah, that's true. Super chat from Franz. What about Maggie the Frog's prophecy of 3 children? Yeah, that might mean that Cersei dies first, before she can give birth. On the other hand, that prophecy was already kind of messed up in the show. They already screwed that up because she's already had 4 children in the show. She already had a child with Robert that died in the crib. So
prophecies can be tricky. Just ask Melisandre.
Good call. Very good call. Okay. Where are we at now? So let's talk a little more about Qyburn, because there's some interesting things about this. First of all, Cersei's talk about being clever and doing what father would do, that just screams like Red Wedding or something vicious and sneaky and clever. And so my first guess is she'll agree to the armistice, agree to have some sort of meeting, and then maybe pull off some kind of ambush or try to do something to assassinate Daenerys. And Qyburn will certainly be involved in that. Qyburn will be instrumental to whatever this plot is and planning it out. And also,
do we think that Dany's gonna go meet with Cersei?
Maybe not directly, but you I don't know.
Yeah, I think Jon will. I think Jon will be there in King's Landing with a zombie, and he might have representatives with him. He might have Tyrion, even maybe Davos. He might have some other representative of Dany's. If Jon's going as a king, he's not going as representative of Dany. He's going on his own, but he may bring a representative of Dany with him. And I wonder how much more Cersei cares about Jon than Dany. Because Jon maybe is claiming to be king of the North, but he's not taking any action towards her. Yeah. Whereas Dany is. She's not just claiming to be king of all the lands of Westeros, but also she's directly attacking her.
That's a good point. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see how she plays it. But I do suspect that Cersei's going to try for an assassination or a Red Wedding 2.0 type thing.
The Red Armistice.
I guess we already had 2.0 with the phrase, although that wasn't a wedding. But anyway, it was a gathering, the Red Gathering. And this is something a little more for Saturday, but I want to bring the question up now so you guys can think about it during the week. What does Qyburn think of this concept of an army of the dead?
Yeah.
He's like, well, we've got one right here. He's probably bigger than most of the things they have. He's not bigger than a giant, but, he's got to be fascinated. Like, from a scientific perspective, he's probably like, huh.
As you bring that up, he might encourage Cersei to have this meeting. He's like,
let me see their
my
example.
grace, it would be interesting to see.
Yeah. So really, really want to know about that. That's got to be cool. Because Qyburn is really creepy, but he's on that, like, he knows how to do cool plot-changing things, like make dragon-shooting scorpions and make, all these other things, duplicate poisons and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, I'm very curious about that. I really kind of thought we'd see some Varys versus Qyburn this season, but that's not even remotely happening.
I thought we'd see some Euron.
Yeah,
Not Varys necessarily, but some Euron with Qyburn.
It's interesting. Yeah. We never get to see that. It's too bad. Cersei also says that she knows everything that happens in this town, but she didn't know about Gendry. Davos, right? but that really must have scared Jaime a little bit. That's another thing I was saying. Is like it points out the inequity between them right now. Like Jaime tries this thing, and Cersei's just like, I knew all about it.
That was another moment, by the way, that a couple moments in that scene, Cersei let on some emotion. And we had just talked about how she's usually so stone-faced, and the subtlest control of her face can reveal so much. But she had straight up, frustration and upsetness, and then happiness when she embraced Jaime. She was smiling, and then her face went cold, and she said, "Don't ever betray me again."
Yeah. Okay, so we'll have more about them later. You guys can certainly fire off questions if you have more to say about that topic, but let us do a few mid-roll activities here and then get back to it. We give a shout-out to our Northern Champions. On Patreon, we've got people who have selected Northern Champion as their title. We have J. Wilson, Winter's King. We have Sir Stephen, the Hammer of the North. We have Winter's King, Lord of the First Men. We have Lady Ardros, Mother of Wolves. We have Sir Daniel, the Sneaky Russian. We have Sir Brian, the Returned, Knight of the Last House, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Red Song. And we have Sir Kobe of House Stonesmith, words are wind, deeds are stone. Also, shout out to our pair of Blood Riders, who are awesome and very supportive. First of all, we have Kohol Koi, Master of the Bow, called Sunpiercer, who has recently infected a deserving ex with grayscale. Good call. That's a good style revenge. And Vorsaki, which is the Dothraki word for fire, and wielder of Firebringer. Fire or Firebringer? I've already forgotten. I'll have to look that up. Sorry about that. Wielder of a Valyrian Steel Arak with a dragon bone hilt. Very cool. I like that. I wish I had something like that. That would help me cut down my enemies, no doubt. And also thanks to Sir Valentin Degen, who is creator of the Game of Predictions site. Go to gameofpredictions.org. It's a free Game of Thrones predictions / futures market. You get virtual points. You make predictions and guesses against a market. And, there's like a leaderboard and things like that. So it's pretty fun. He's trying to get that going. We're happy to help support that effort. It's free. There's no money involved. We're not getting a cut or anything. It's just a cool thing.
Pride and honor.
Yeah, so check it out if you're interested, and might be a lot of fun.
Only thing more valuable than pride and honor is cool points.
Yeah, and there is a link on our supporters page that gives you to a video that explains what the Producers Market's all about. Scroll down to find Sir Valentin of House Degen near the top of our supporters page, and there's a link to a YouTube video that explains what he's all about, or what his site is all about. All right, that's it for that. Let us move on. Let's go to Winterfell.
Someone asked what I was drinking.
Oh, yeah. What are you drinking? I skipped over that today.
Also, I want to show off my awesome shirt.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk shirts for a second. What do you got?
Since I'm Dancing Sean, this is the
Pulp
dance
Fiction.
scene from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. I've got my old school Veil of my Iron Throne Ned Stark shirt. I wanted to wear something with one of the fathers. Since fatherhood was such a theme, or the deeds of our fathers was such a theme, it's my only Ned Stark shirt. This is kind of a funny shirt because it's probably illegal to make. This was a band called Veil of Maya that just grabbed this, and I'm pretty sure they don't have the rights to that. But I saw it at a concert. I was like, well, they probably can't sell this, so I'm going to buy it.
Danger's their middle name, man. They live on the edge making T-shirts. It reminds me, the Iron Throne reminds me, we talked about iconic images coming from Game of Thrones, and I was thinking about the idea of just the image of Westeros, the map or whatever. And in the Iron Throne, you guys pointed out, it didn't dawn on any of us. The Stark Wolf, the Lannister Lion, the three-headed Targaryen Dragon. There's every house. There's like
so many of them.
Yeah.
Sigils. Yeah.
Some of them are going to be bigger or deeper into pop culture than others, but that's the type of iconic imagery that I was talking about, that I love, and I will be so happy to see permeate culture.
All right, so
my drink though.
Oh yeah, your drink.
I didn't have the standard. I have still my green protein naked drink, but I didn't have a green Mountain Dew. So this is a red Mountain Dew mixed with it, which I was hesitant to do. It's pretty good. pretty good.
I
You know,
doubt
I'll
it.
try anything.
I doubt it. Okay, Winterfell. We've got lords upset with Jon being gone. This is, I guess this is part of the anxiety that everyone's feeling, the tension of the North. And Glover flat out says that maybe we should have chosen you instead. And Jon Royce is like, we came here for you, not him. And, Sansa listens patiently as she tells Arya later and, kind of lays it out like, this isn't how it works. And then we get to Arya and Sansa pretty quickly. And we have a question from Christian Mertes who says, I have an important question. How effing amazing did Sansa look in her heavy gray dress? Very simple yet stunning, and the fabric moves really nicely. Very understated, perfect for Sansa Stark. New costume designer's doing a fantastic job, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I agree. The costumes are great, and it fit the scene really well because immediately Arya calls her out for being fancy. And so it's like, you like fancy stuff. It makes you feel better than other people. So it actually fits the scene. It wasn't just like detail, Someone says, good God, that drink sounds like a horror. See, that's more how I think, yeah. Anyway.
I can survive horrors.
So
I drink horrors for breakfast.
So I sort of called this, but not nearly fully. We definitely predicted, and I'm not saying it was a difficult prediction to make, that Arya would be difficult. She would be aggressive. But I didn't expect this level of viciousness. Like, well, just cut their heads off. I was like, whoa. I was expecting her to be kind of unruly and to make like suggestions that weren't necessarily in line with how politics need to work, and the alliance building. Like Sansa said, this is how you get people to work together. And Arya, I just did not expect it to be that bad.
I do think it was maybe a jump from where, what I expected or what most people would expect. But it's been talked about ad nauseum how she's on this dark path. And it makes sense. I think it makes sense for someone on a dark path to have dark expectations. Mm-hmm. What we see is Sansa doing a good job. She sees is Sansa conniving, right?
Yes.
The person who is more likely to lie to other people is more likely to be suspicious of people lying to them, right?
Yes.
Arya is trained in all these dark arts and is conniving, hidden faces, and how to detect lies. It's where her mind is. She's in this dark place, on this dark path, and that's just what she sees around her, even in her own sister,
Yeah, she just attacks Sansa with, like, you're thinking about it right now. And, like, yeah, you just brought it up. Of course I'm thinking about it right now. Like, but I think, and then, of course, this is kind of surprising that this was all a setup by Littlefinger, the whole hiding the letter and pretending to walk around. Behind the episode, it's revealed that Littlefinger is setting her up. It's not the other way around. Arya isn't like counter setting up Littlefinger. Some people have proposed that theory, but unless the showrunners are being really coy, that's not the case. So she is being fooled, at least to this part. It may, it may move past this and she may figure it out. Like I kind of expect her to. I kind of expect her to wise up and figure out that Littlefinger is messing with them.
Might be too late though. She might figure it out after she's already created a rift with Sansa or
True.
split lords in the north or something like that.
You're right. The damage may be done.
By the way, think about this. To me, this is almost obvious. Those lords complaining to Sansa like that. Probably because Littlefinger talked to him. He's probably playing those scenes
We see him
too.
talking to them right later, and Arya's
Yeah.
watching, and that may have been just so Arya could see it, but it was clear.
Yeah, he might have just been saying, "How's the weather today?"
Yeah, he's like, "What y'all up to? You want to have a glass of wine later? Yeah, let's go get a lemon cake."
I appreciate people love to hate on Littlefinger, and obviously he's done some bad things. And the thing is, other people have done bad things. That's what bothers me, I guess, is that there's a lot of characters done bad things, and some of them are good guys and some are bad guys. And to me, I'm like, well, why are you picking these over these? I don't know. And I guess it's because a lot of the bad things that Littlefinger's done is directed toward these heroine characters, right? But one way or the other, I appreciate even the bad characters like Joffrey or Ramsay. I don't want to put Littlefinger in quite a villainous category as them, but they still are part of why the show is interesting. If no one was a bad guy, well, we wouldn't be watching it. What's going on? Littlefinger stirs things up. And if all the bad guys were dumb and easy to defeat, well, they wouldn't be impressive or memorable or a challenge. I wouldn't be impressed with the good guys for defeating a bad guy who is not good at being a bad guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I like seeing Littlefinger on his game here.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to build up to. Whatever you think of him, I appreciate this turn of plot here, this intrigue coming in.
Yeah, it was very surprising. Like I was like, ooh, he's gonna get her. She's gonna get him. He's gonna get her. Oh my! I still think in the end, Littlefinger will eat it, and Arya and Sansa will probably be fine. But it may do permanent damage. You're right. Okay, so here's the letter itself. This is what Arya finds, and it's Sansa's letter to Robb when she's before Ned is executed, but after he's been charged with treason, and and they're like, she's like, can I just talk to him first? Like, Sansa, you disappoint us. They won't let her talk to Ned, and they make her send this letter. And the letter says, Robb, I write to you with a heavy heart. Our good King Robert is dead, killed from wounds he took in a boar hunt. Father has been charged with treason. He conspired with Robert's brothers against my beloved Joffrey and tried to steal his throne. The Lannisters are treating me very well and provide me with every comfort. I beg you, come to King's Landing, swear fealty to King Joffrey, and prevent any strife between the great houses of Lannister and Stark. Now, Arya's not very understanding right now. She's not in a place to
Clearly.
be like, yeah, clearly. Arya's not in a place to be like, I get it. They forced her to write this. I get it. But even at the time when Robb got the message and Catelyn, they're mad that there was no mention of Arya. Like, what happened to Arya? Like, give us news of Arya. And so Arya may notice that same thing too. Like, hey, come you didn't say anything about me, or how come this and that? Like, there's a lot for her to be upset with here.
This letter, in the context of what she's already seen,
is bad. But
right?
But in truth, Sansa had no choice. She's like 13 and can't fight. Is held by Kingsguard. Like, what is she gonna do? She could refuse, I guess. Maybe Arya would be that stubborn and not do it. But...
And they were playing good cop with her too. Like Cersei was, maybe on a genuine level, was trying to be a mother figure to her.
Yeah, that's a good point. Question from Lord Commander Daenerys Flint. It's pretty apparent that Littlefinger is trying to sow discord between Sansa and Arya with the scroll he planned for Arya to find. And even though you see the two sisters squabbling early in the episode, I still feel like it's going to backfire on him. I feel like it's pretty obvious that Arya will realize that Sansa was forced to write that letter. Do you think that Arya and or Sansa will realize what Littlefinger's up to and play along with his game? Or do you think that they're really going to be so petty as to buy into his schemes and really be at odds with one another? I think they will be at odds for a little while, but I do think they'll figure it out. And here's the main reason, is that when it comes down to it, when it comes down to who's lying, Arya will be able to figure it out. Arya's played the lying game like crazy. She spent so much time playing the lying game, and when it comes down to it, she's going to realize who's lying. Like,
she might not be able to tell. I can imagine Littlefinger being good enough.
Really good at lying.
Maybe being aware of the lying game, right?
Yeah.
But Sansa's not, and so maybe she won't be able to tell if Littlefinger's lying, but she'll be able to tell if Sansa's lying.
Yeah, and of course Bran, can, like I see someone saying, Bran can get involved in this whole thing and point out what's true and what isn't. And of course the sisters will listen to Bran and not Littlefinger.
Yeah. I also don't think, well, they'll try to. He might not be able to communicate it well.
Oh yeah, that's true. I just mean anything he says, they'll believe.
Right.
They won't.
I also think that Sansa's less likely to be petty here than Arya is. Right? I think Sansa's trying to be forthright and genuine, and Arya's like trying to find some drama.
But it's possible that Arya's right. Like, if Arya's really this good at reading, maybe she's just being hyper aggressive and accusatory, and because she's always had some issues with her sister. But maybe she's right. Maybe Sansa really is.
Keep in mind, just because Sansa may legitimately have some ambition to be queen, I mean, who would dare have ambition to be queen?
Right.
What kind of a villain would dare have ambition to be queen?
That's not the same as taking action. Yeah.
Right. Say she was. It doesn't mean she hates Jon or wants to take him out. Wanting to be queen isn't the same as wanting to take it. But even if she did want to be queen and wanted to take Jon out, how much more of a villain is she than Dany or Yara or whoever else? Right. So
yeah, that's a good point. So, and speaking of those unhappy lords, they they won't be happy with Jon just going to Eastwatch and going beyond the wall either. They're like, what are you doing? Yeah. You're supposed to be with us. But like Sansa said, he's doing what he thinks is right. And, as much as we've criticized this plan, he's certainly not letting, he's certainly bold enough to take action as he sees fit, and that's something they can respect, hopefully. I don't know, we'll see. I can understand that they're all very nervous and wanting their leader to be there. The guy who's faced this problem, the others and the Walking Dead, he's the one that has this information that they don't have, and so I do see why they feel a little lost without him. So let's talk about Eastwatch. Eastwatch is really cool looking, but let's see, Shay's going to pull up this image of Eastwatch. Now, early on in the episode, we see it from another angle. We see the ravens flying past it, but, this is what it looks like. It's really cool. I didn't expect it to look like this, and it's like the ravens flying past it, and you can see that it would be hard to walk around. You can see that if they were going to go around it, they would have to freeze the water. Now, I'm still down on the possibility of them freezing the water. I can't say it's impossible, but, it would feel kind of cheap. But you can see how well defended that corner is. Like, you can't just sneak around it. It's like really imposing and cliffy and craggy and all that. So really good looking. And it was kind of cool to see the Night King recognize what was going on there and kind of like knock Bran out of the Ravens there, like overpower. That was kind of neat. I'm not exactly sure how that all works, but it was pretty clear what was happening. The Night King is probably a lot stronger than Bran.
One of my preseason predictions was that Bran and the Night King would have a psychic battle, and I wonder if that was a first stage of it.
Prelude, yeah. So we have Thoros and Beric and talking to each other, and you talked about this ahead of time, like maybe these guys wouldn't be trusted, when they showed up, like who are these Relorists? And you're pretty much right there. It also resolved a logistical problem, like where have these guys been this whole time? Okay, they've been languishing in jail. All right, they fixed that. They solved that one retroactively. That's cool. Sometimes it looks like it doesn't make sense, and often it doesn't, but sometimes it does. This one worked out, and a bunch of reunions in this moment. You got a whole bunch of people recognizing it. Gendry's like, no, those guys suck.
Don't trust them.
And Jorah's like, Thoros? And there was so many. And Tormund is like, Jorah? You're a Mormont? Yeah. And then I love Tormund's line about, which queen is that? There's two queens. How many queens are there now? Like, is that the queen who with the dragons, or the queen who has sleeps with her brother? Which is which is which? And that wasn't just humor. Like I said earlier, that's just to show you how removed they are from everything. They're not getting news up there, and to remind you how far away it all is.
Kind of minor, but it also was a good way to bring us into the end of a conversation. Like, they don't need to go through all this again, but we need to know that they have gone through all this, which can help remind us that there's probably other things that they go through in these conversations off screen that we don't always get to see.
Yeah, and then then this actual mission. It's cool to see that Tormund and others are like ready to go. They're like, yeah, we've been wanting to fight, because that's their homeland that's been lost. Think about all these things. They're kind of exiles in a land that doesn't really necessarily welcome them, and they lost their home. So they have, arguably more than anybody, a reason to want to get at it, and take back what's their homeland. And so it's cool to see them jumping to it. Now, but it makes you nervous, right? Like as we said earlier, there's all these 50-50s that we're throwing on some of these characters. There's more than just the 7. There's some, unnamed red shirt wildlings, and some of those guys were carrying the gear. Some people were like, did they even bring like a cage or a sledge? They did. You could see it. It was kind of hard to see, but there was the main 7 guys that were kind of marching in like a wedge formation. But then there were some other wildlings behind them, maybe 5 or 8 more. I don't know, but they were hauling stuff. They had gear. So one of those things was a sledge. So
boy, just now it's clicking in my mind. They're gonna put a wildling in a crate, bring a crate to King's Landing. Sandor is going to open up that crate and give us the image we saw in the trailer.
It might be. That's kind of how it's looking, yeah. Something along those lines. And what's kind of odd here, though, like a couple things to think about is like maybe how we can predict who will live and who won't is based on what it would do to the story. Like I think Jon is, whether he dies and comes back again, he's going to be around, no doubt. Like that's the most safe as far as his arc will continue one way or the other. Tormund, I feel sort of good about Tormund surviving because, again, he's the only named wildling. Sandor, Gendry,
I think he's going to live for Clegane Bowl.
Yeah, okay, good point. Yeah, so Sandor is maybe pretty safe. The 2 Relorists, Thoros and Beric, might be the most likely to be doomed.
Yeah.
Like Beric, of course, and especially because they're the most fatalistic. They're already like, this is why we're here. They're the most like...
They've already accepted it or whatever.
They're the most purpose-driven here. Yeah, they're the most like believing in the higher power aspect of it all.
You can imagine they've had other... We know that they've seen certain visions, and they shared one with Sandor. They may have had other visions, much like Trojan. They might have already seen their own death.
Yeah.
And they're just living it out.
That's a good point. Yeah, and Gendry, like we said, he's tough to figure. I kind of think Gendry's a little more likely to live than not, but he could easily just like... not. I mean, it could just be that simple. Gets rid of his claim to the throne. Just ties it up in a bow. It'd be sad, but if they want us to be sad, they want us to be sad sometimes, and that would make us sad. Another thing that makes me worry about Jorah is, okay, so let's say they bring the proof down, right? Dany probably needs less proof. Dany definitely needs less proof than Cersei does. Even if the proof matters to Cersei, it still may just be an opportunity for her. Jorah. If Jorah dies, that makes it really personal for her, right? I saw someone mention that on Twitter, and I thought that's a good point, because Jorah, like, that's the only way this gets really personal for her, is if she loses someone she cares about. You know, I mean, she kind of cares about Jon.
To the undead.
To the undead, yeah.
That makes it more of a threat to her specifically. Yeah.
Okay, Acre Frey suggests here, good old Lord of the Chicken Dance, if Sandor dies and becomes a white, this is a super chat, that's perfect reason for him to head south to his brother for Clegane Bowl. Both Cleganes would be undead, too.
Yeah, that's good.
What a weird way for that to end. Not a weird bad, but like after all this time, we've been waiting for Clegane Bowl for years, and they're both undead when it happens.
Zombie Clegane Bowl.
That's a twist. That is a twist, but it is.
I like it.
I can
like
kind of
that
see
idea.
that now.
Yeah.
The more, I mean, we talked about a prediction because of that trailer shot. Yeah, I was like, what is that all about? I mean, that's a preseason trailer shot, so it's really kind of like it was always kind of hard to figure out how that was going to work. You know, like how is he going to go on the north and then be in the south? And that's why I think some people were saying maybe that wasn't Sandor. But now I can see, yeah, it's really kind of all falling into place.
I don't know how much I'm like, I just feel this idea settling in my mind, and that's just it now. That's how but I don't know if I'm just excited about the idea, or if it makes a lot of sense, or if it's actually likely or not, but I tell you what, it's what I'm going with from now on.
Yeah, and you can picture just like how it went for Sandor. Maybe it'll go like oh man, what if it's like Sandor and Beric? When Sandor like thinks he's won, and then he's walking away, and Beric is like still alive. And it could be like that. Like Gregor does that to him, and Gregor's like,
Sandor.
I win, and then Sandor gets right back up.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Oh, hype, get hype, people. Clegane Bowl. It's like it can only be 1 or 2 episodes away.
Yeah.
If it's coming at all, which that trailer shot surely does point to that.
You know, a lot of people have drawn parallels to this group heading up north to the Magnificent Seven. 4 of the 7 died at the end of the Magnificent Seven. 4 of the 7 died.
Yeah. So if only 3 of them could survive, who would they be? Jon?
Sandor.
Jon. If Sandor's undead, did he truly survive?
Yeah, I'm gonna say not Sandor. He stays in a show but doesn't survive. I'm gonna give Gendry and Jorah.
Okay. Yeah, so you agree that Beric and Thoros are like the most likely.
Tormund? No, I think
Tormund. Yeah, I think Tormund's more likely. Yeah, I think Tormund, Jon, and
Jorah might die.
Either Jorah or Gendry.
By
if
the
it's
way,
4, obviously that's a random kind of. It doesn't have to be the Magnificent 7, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so y'all certainly, if you feel like it, send us your predictions on who you think's going to die. This is one of those unusual spots where there's like quite a level of different predictions that can be made as to who's going to die. Like it's like, so certain that people are going to die. That someone like this episode was so awesome because of all these characters and interactions and reunions, but it's also got that like, oh boy, this isn't going to last long though, is it?
Another thought I had with how things might play up here, especially because from the trailers it looks like a pretty dire spot, that they're all like on this little ledge with just surrounded everywhere by the zombie mass. One thought that I had that we talked about a little bit was the idea that the zombie mass might just be moving past them. And one way that they, or some of them might live exactly, is that they're almost oblivious to these 7 random dudes, whatever, we're marching on the whole south, and these guys aren't really in our way.
Yeah,
and
kill them if they're in the way,
incidentally, there might be some fights by the ones that cross paths, but they may not all be there to hunt them down specifically, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that might change if the Night King sees them and recognizes Jon. It might change, but another thought I had, and things that may come into play here that might turn it in ways that we don't expect, are Benjen Stark,
Benjen Stark beyond the wall. Like it's got to happen, right? He's got to turn up.
And it's also possible, I think, that the Children of the Forest, maybe they make some sort of last stand, show up out of nowhere with some fire grenades that like clear a path that rescue them at the last minute.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And we'll go into greater depth on that with trailer shots. We'll actually grab trailer shots as we always do on our Saturday Predictions and Theories episode, and we'll be able to get to a little more level of detail that's maybe not appropriate for some people who don't want to go that deep into seeing what's in the trailers. So, interesting things that were not in this episode or in recent episodes at all. Euron hasn't been seen for a little while. Unsullied are still, I guess, trekking across the Riverlands there. You know, that was... Maybe Dany was going to be like, hey, send her Dothraki up to go find the Unsullied and hook up with them and bring them back into the fold. I mean, that's something they could do. Like, the Armistice does either way. That's one thing that the weight is positive for Dany, for the Unsullied to come back into play, which is it kind of works against what Cersei's hoping for. But also there was no Missandei. I guess there just wasn't a whole lot for her to do.
I took particular note because there was a couple times when they were all gathered around a painted table discussing her plans.
Yeah.
And everyone was there except Missandei.
Yeah, that was a little odd. I don't read too much into it, but it was odd.
It made me start thinking about how maybe she doesn't have a role there. She's like the translator. That's, like she doesn't even translate. But then I started thinking, no, her role has gotten deeper than that. She's definitely an advisor to Dany and a friend to Dany. Maybe it's just random. Maybe it's not. Doesn't mean something. But I couldn't help but notice that she was absent from all these meetings and plans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it was a little bit peculiar. Okay, some questions. We're through the main portion of the episode. We're going to take Q&A questions. So certainly fire away if you feel so inclined. We have several that were loaded in ahead of time, starting with Lady Airdros. Do you think Dany won't go into detail about what she had done? Do you think Dany didn't go into detail about what she had done with Jon because she didn't want him to know? Maybe he wouldn't approve of her actions. Maybe she was regretting it a little bit. Also, I just wanted to say that I love the touch of Drogon blinking at Jon. That's something animals do to tell others they mean no harm and are relaxed in their environment. Yeah, it is a nice touch. Yeah, it's true. Like that's certainly like the cats will do that because they don't have to close their eyes. It's not like they have to blink. It's more of an active thing. Like cats don't have eyelids.
Yeah, they hold that stare if they're about to attack, or
or
even if they're about to run
because they're predators. Yeah, like they do not like there is not a blink. Yeah, they are focused and ready to go. So that was a nice touch. I didn't really realize that, but you're totally right. That's cool. Also, she wants to say, finally, when this is all over, Davos could make some cash selling his Davrodesiac. Yeah, that's the pun of the stream right here. Thanks, Lady Airdros. Winner. Yes. But why? Yeah, I think maybe she didn't want to just tell Jon about the burning the trial. I think she gets that that's not the best thing to spread around. It's not something to brag about. Certainly, let's just... maybe she had some time to think about it. Maybe she was like, maybe Tyrion had a point there. I don't know. It's hard to say whether she was waffling on that at all. We'll see how she carries herself going forward,
I think, honestly, as much as anything, I expect details will be spoken about. In real life, when people do cool things, they talk about the cool things, or bad things, or scary things. They're going to talk about it. But in this moment, they can't, from a presentation, from like a filmmaking standpoint, they don't need to go through this right now. They don't have time in the episode for this right now.
That's true. Mark Joseph wants to know, do you think Sam took the book that he was reading? Yeah, we talked about this. We're not sure. On rewatch, he was taking more books, not putting books back, and it's doubtful he would leave anything behind. Hopefully when Bran tells Jon, Sam can back up that claim. Everything's in place for Jon's legitimacy to be proven. Yeah, it's just really not sure if he took the book or not. I kind of think he didn't because it was just a book that he was like, this is boring crap. I don't care about that. It's just a bunch of step counting and window counting and poop counting. Why do I care about that? But it's entirely possible Gilly brought it. She was enjoying that book.
Yeah.
And it's entirely possible Sam brought it even though he wasn't in. Maybe he just wanted to make sure that he covered his bases and it's like, yeah, maybe there's something in here. So I don't know. I just don't know if he brought that book. But I definitely agree with the last statement that it's in place. One way or the other. Like the Citadel can find these books,
We I mean, not some special insight that we had, but many people assumed that Sam was given those particular scrolls to scribe for a reason. So far, we haven't seen a particular reason for that. Whether Ebros wanted him to find out who Jon's parents, I don't know that that's a thing he would know or care about. So maybe it's a stretch, maybe it was just random, busy work for Sam. But Sam definitely seemed to be picking out certain ones to take with him, separate from whatever he had been given to scribe. And so the showmakers, this is a great tool for them. It's a great storytelling tool for them to reveal things to us that are necessary for plot points to come together. So whether Sam grabbed that book or not, I remember thinking a long time ago, like maybe even season 2 or something, maybe we'll just never know. Or sorry, maybe Jon will just never know. There's lots of things that people go to their grave with. Lots of there's lots of secrets, if you will, that I have no reason to ever tell anyone, that no one else knows or has any reason to tell, and may just never be known to the world,
So far, the details have been all for us. Jon, having Bran, Bran knows. That's it, right? Bran saw it in his vision, and the readers, or not the readers, the watchers, we all got that. It was pretty, the way it was done. And then we move over to, where they're talking about it in the other places, and it just kind of goes the same way. It's just, it's all...
It would add to the irony and tragedy if Jon dies and just never having known.
We know, no one in the story knows he's legitimate, and only Bran knows who the parentage thing. I mean, well, besides maybe Howland Reed or those two birth maids.
Handmaids? There are a few wild cards out there. but they definitely have had minimal, if any, foreshadowing. So
Yeah, that's true. Okay, another question. Doesn't the letter being the one Sansa sent under duress make Littlefinger's scheming less impressive? Arya saw Sansa the day Ned died. Arya knows Sansa was basically a captive. It shouldn't be hard for Sansa to explain that. Seems like much ado about nothing. Well, yeah, I mean, we don't exactly know what Arya is, how she's going to take it, but so I do kind of think that it won't work. But it, like we said earlier, it may still cause damage. And as someone else pointed, in the meantime, what if in the chat here I saw an interesting comment? What if Arya just takes it on herself to like kill Glover, you know? Or kill.
She seemed quick to suggest rolling heads, right? And here's another thing too that's frustrating and scary about Arya, because a lot of times I try to point out a character that's presented sort of villainously, or at least perceived as villainously, like Littlefinger, for example. Think about what he's done. How many people has Littlefinger killed? Like maybe two.
No,
maybe,
I mean he's
maybe a
dozen.
dozen.
A lot more than that.
How many has Arya killed?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Arya's kill count is higher than
Arya has
Littlefinger's.
wielded the blade, but Littlefinger's decisions have killed far more people. Far more people. In terms of like actually sticking the blade in someone,
Right.
Like we haven't ever seen Littlefinger do that.
Are you accounting for like
Except for pushing
started
Lysa.
Yeah.
Yes, I am exactly.
Okay, right.
Yeah, starting war.
How
counts.
many wars has he stopped?
None that
Is
I
there-
know of. He thrives on war. He wants war. He's always
True.
pushed. Remember, chaos
True.
is a ladder.
Yeah.
That's his thing. So he's always pushing for that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm not necessarily trying to justify him too hard, but I'm just trying to point out that, and maybe he's not the best parallel to draw, but Arya's killed a lot of people. And we even see her kind of learning the lesson that everyone she thinks of an enemy isn't necessarily an enemy. And she's even spent time with Sandor and kind of had to reconcile the idea that he killed the butcher's boy, but he was ordered to do it by the prince. And he was even put on trial for that. It ostensibly trial by combat, and survived that trial. Like on some level, he's had innocence demonstrated. And Arya's been witness to many of these types of decisions that politicians have to make that they don't necessarily believe in, yet she killed all those Freys. How many of those Freys were just doing what their dad told them? How many of them were afraid of retribution of their family or their own lives if they didn't participate? Arya, did she research and figure out and make sure everyone's guilty? Should they give them all trials?
That's not really the point, though, is it? Though, like
Well,
we know Arya's bad. The argument isn't that Arya hasn't killed a lot of people. The argument is that Littlefinger has done far worse.
Well,
and it's true. There's really no way around that. Like
I'm just
everybody is disagreeing.
I'm just saying I'm afraid for what Arya might do here in King's Landing. She might kill some people that are innocent.
Well, not you mean Winterfell,
or at least
Winterfell, right?
Winterfell, sorry.
Oh, I
or at
completely agree
least
with that.
on the edge, of whether or not they're innocent.
I completely agree with that. Like, she could quite possibly just take it into her own hands, and that could cause all kinds of problems. Like, if she kills Glover, if she kills Royce, that would be very unexpected. We've been predicting Royce to take over for Littlefinger. Like, that's why he's getting lines. But what if she kills him, and then it's still Littlefinger, and it's like, that's not what we expected at all, is it? So I agree. That's interesting. Yeah, we'll have to see. All right, so let's next question here from Callum Evans. Oh no, actually, sorry. We have. I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. What the fuck, John? Could you be any more awkward? Danny was obviously into John, and he says the same thing Arthur Dayne says to Ned before they fight to the death. Well, honestly, this line has been said by a lot of people. I wish you good fortune in the wars to come has been said like probably a dozen times by a bunch of different characters. So I'm not sure if that was supposed to be a nod to Ned and Dane because it's been said in so many other places. But that is the time. That is certainly something that Ned said. Young Ned or middle Ned. There's been 3
I wonder
Neds.
if it's just like a common phrase in Westeros.
It seems like it is because of how often it's been said. It's been said a lot. Okay, so another one. Here's from Callum Evans. Do you think that the show is showing the different personalities of Ice and Fire with Daenerys using fire and acting hot-headed, and Bran being cold and emotionless, and Jon falling somewhere in the middle? Yeah, just will back up a little bit on Bran. I rewatched some of last season, and one of the reasons Bran is so cold and emotionless, we have to remember, it isn't just because he lost his family or his companions, and he feels guilty about that because he kind of triggered it in a way, but because remember this scene. The Three-Eyed Raven's like, it's time. Bran's like, for what? It's like, for you to become me. And he's like, am I ready? No. And he says, no, you're not. So that would explain why. Like, he got all that information fire-hosed into his head. So, that would have an impact. It would get him emotionally as well as kind of move him off of normal humanity by even more than we may have been thinking. Because of all that stuff happening to him. So,
when you mentioned that to me, it made me start thinking about what the nature of past Three-Eyed Ravens had been, how they took it on, how much life experience they had at that moment. and how much the Three-Eyed Ravens might have saved the kingdom in the past. How many times has the Night Walker started a movement that was staved off by the Three-Eyed Raven, but this time he just can't do it, you know?
Yeah. Okay, next question is, I'm hoping this doesn't, from Thomas Peps, from Helminth, the Sellsword Sentinel, I should say. I'm hoping this doesn't step into the category of predictions and theories reserved for the Saturday episode, but when Cersei says, if we want to beat her, we have to be clever. We have to fight like her father would have. Is it just me, or do you get images of the Red Wedding dancing in your head? Well, as I said earlier, absolutely what I got in my head. So yes, we're on the same wavelength there. I don't think it'll be a wedding. It's like hard to imagine who would marry who in this scenario, but some sort of gathering.
It's
where
easy
there's
to
an
imagine.
ambush.
I don't know if it's likely.
Well, I mean, between
imagine
Dany,
Cersei wearing Euron, Dany marrying Jon.
Well, no, I mean, but that wouldn't be a Red Wedding scenario. It would have to be someone on Team Lannister marrying someone, you know, like Cersei and Cersei wouldn't be invited to a Jon and Dany marriage, you know. Well, I don't think so. But yeah, so that's kind of like.
All right, fine. Tyrion marrying Dany.
Tyrion marrying Cersei. That'll. Yikes. So yeah, I do think something is up here. Cersei is going to do it. Jaime won't like it, but it's going to happen because Cersei's got more power. I mean, that's kind of how I see the broad strokes at this point. Obviously, the details can change. We shall see. Question from Nordstern. Why do you think Missandei was not present in the Dany scenes at all? She wasn't at the council and then not even saying goodbye. Yeah, not even saying goodbye. Does it give a clue to her turning against Dany? Maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't think it means she's turning against Dany. For one thing, there's just she doesn't even know anybody else in Westeros.
Yeah.
I mean, who's she going to side with instead? And I just don't see a compelling reason for her to be mad at Dany. You know, like, what has Dany done to, you know, why? You know, Dany saved her, and she's one of the people that someone says she's too busy being too fast and too furious.
I say that.
Shea says that. I wasn't sure if you grabbed that from someone else. She's in that movie?
She's in the Fast and Furious movies.
Okay, I didn't know she was in the Fast and Furious movies. Okay, that explains it. She's off driving fancy cars.
She's racing to Casterly Rock to reunite with.
Maybe she's driving back to Essos, you know, in her hydro car.
She stole the special machine that Varys and Littlefinger use. It's a DeLorean.
Okay. Okay, here's some questions from today's chat that Shea pulled. Kamit666. From the prior episode, my question is, can Arya change faces and become a White Walker? I don't know about that.
How permanent would it
be? I'm just here. We're busy thinking about can she look like Littlefinger, or can she, you know, maybe look like Sansa or something like that? And it's like, that's where I'm thinking. Actually mimicking a White Walker. It's hard to imagine the circumstances where she would want to do that. I don't know if she can do that.
Yeah,
that's a
what
tough
would the motivation be?
Yeah.
Probably won't come until after we'd heard them talk, though. So.
I don't know if it might fool other people. It wouldn't fool a fellow White Walker. They'd probably be a sort of sense or something. I don't know. Yeah. Interesting. You know, and I do expect Arya to be involved in some fighting. Not this season. I mean, fighting against the Walkers and stuff. So, yeah. I mean, we predicted that, you know, the possibility of her going after Night King. That's why she's got Valyrian steel now and, you know, sneaking up on him or something. I don't know. But I didn't consider that involving a disguise. Because it feels like they can just detect things, you know, like they can sense it. I don't know. It's so hard to know how they work. Their powers are still very mysterious at this point, even this late in the game. Jax Frankovich says, think Gilly will bring that scroll with her to Winterfell. Yeah. What will that revelation to Jon/Dany/the North be like? Now, that's another interesting possibility. We talked about how Gilly is probably not going to go all the way north because it's how dangerous it is. Although, the problem with that thinking is she made him promise we're not splitting apart.
Right.
That's so I kind of forgot about that. Yeah. So, yeah, that's tricky.
Does the promise still stand when he is the lord of his own house?
He probably shouldn't be lord of his own house. He's still in the Night's Watch. He's still not available to inherit. He hasn't died and come back like Jon.
Yeah.
Sam needs to die and come back. Then he can be lord of Hornhill. But he's still a brother. But yeah, it's just who knows if he's going to be punished for running off from the Maesters. But that was a direct order from Jon, who's no longer the Lord Commander. Like, I don't know the technicality of what rule he broke just now. I don't know how that works. It's I think he can get away with it as long as he can get back north, especially considering how important he is. You know, like, you're going to throw me in jail? I'm the dude who knows all this stuff works, you know?
Whenever these types of questions start coming up, I always think of I think the theme song for the show should be the Bob Dylan song, These Times Are Changing. Rules that may have been accepted in the past, or maybe not so much anymore.
Okay, next question from Jay Beach. How do you think Dany's going to feel when she realizes the man who cured her friend's grayscale is the son and the brother of the man she roasted? Yeah, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna be painful for both of them probably. Both John, Danny, and especially Sam. Although, like we said, Sam doesn't have much love for his father. He may feel bad that happened. He'll feel bad on behalf of his family because they're gonna miss the two elder males in their family. And yeah, here we go. Roger Sampor, Gilly's kid gets Hornhill. Yep, that kid is not in the Night's Watch. He's got Tarly blood. He doesn't really have Tarly blood, but that's what they're passing him off as. That's a good theory. That's a very good theory that he could end up, that the baby could get. We talked about this. We actually talked about this in a prior episode.
Yeah, and it seems more likely now that Randall and Dickon are actually
dead. Yeah, we haven't gone back to this theory now that things have changed so much. We thought about how amazing it would be that if Randall finds this out. Like, a wildling is the head of the house of foreign savages. Okay, from J.D. Shark. Nice name there. Hailing from Canada, it looks like. The sea, super chat. The sea by Eastwatch wasn't frozen in the opening credits last episode. Does this mean the wall is coming down rather than the dead going around? Oh, so it changed. I didn't notice that. The fog was gone.
I didn't notice it either.
That's very interesting. I have to go back and look at that because I didn't catch that.
Maybe they're already around to the other side.
So I do think that the wall is coming down, though. I do think it's coming down this season. I think it might be one of the things that happens in the last episode. That's been my guess since the beginning of the season. Not based on any trailer shots or anything, just my own, guessing at how they're going to hit the main story points and what would be such an epic thing to have at the end of the season to really give us a big cliffhanger for the final season. Like Tyrion riding a dragon, Jon riding a dragon, those are possibilities. But the wall coming down, it feels like I kind of thought it might happen last season.
Danny showing up in the north with the dragon, even if it's not a new rider.
Which, by the way, is a way for them to get out of their predicament another way. If Danny's happens to show up, that would be... I don't really want it to go that way, but it's absolutely on the table as a possibility.
I'm very suspicious of the wall coming down, although I try to open up the possibility of maybe not the entire wall comes all the way down, all hundreds of miles of it. Maybe a section, maybe a segment of it comes down or opens up at the base or something like that.
Yeah. From Sentitia Kendrick Samuel. Shouldn't Gendry have mentioned Arya? Gendry knew she was a Stark. Oh, and still no mention of Rickon. Yeah, guys, they're never going to talk about Rickon. That's just it. That happened off screen. They just it's an obvious dead end conversation. Like, yeah, they could have given us that moment to show how sad it was and be like for them to have something to bond over. But there's just nothing.
Dead end conversation.
Dead end conversation. I just don't mind that they didn't have it, and I don't expect them to. It's not an oversight. I believe they intentionally just didn't do it. I don't think it's like, oops, we forgot.
That's something you don't want one line of dialogue. The discussion of the death of your brother.
Yeah.
That's an involved, emotional, long thing that I would love to see on screen, but they're not going to commit time to that.
Yeah, so. I get why they didn't have time for that. It would have been another great thing. I would have loved to see it, but yeah. Down or up? Next, and of course, shouldn't Gendry have mentioned Arya? Yeah. See, Gendry he maybe will at some point. I can understand why he hasn't yet. He does know she was a Stark. That's absolutely true. But he may be afraid to bring it up. Like maybe she's worried she's dead. The way they parted was awkward. It was more awkward for him at the time because she was like, "What are you doing? Bring him back, you bad people, selling him to Melisandre." So. I think that my conversation might happen still, but it's another thing that I guess they just didn't have time for it. What would they talk about? Just, hey, yeah, she's alive.
A couple thoughts.
That one could have been one line of dialogue.
It's also, from our perspective, that was a huge moment in relationship between Gendry and Arya.
Yeah.
But Gendry's lived a lot of years since then. He's probably had a few girls and other relationships, and there were other people on that trek that he might have also befriended that are gone or dead or memories. Not to say he shouldn't have brought it up, but I can see how it's a bigger memory and relationship to us than to everyone else. Also, remember every time someone brings up Sansa to Jon, he slams him against the wall and chokes him. Maybe Gendry's going to be careful about what he says.
That's funny. Anchor Frey, Super Chat. I don't recall Sean trying to say Irish wristwatch. He made us all say that. He gave a Super Chat and tried to get us. So go ahead, say it.
British mishmash? Why would anyone want me to say that? That's no problem at all to say mishmash. Irish.
There you go.
Wristwatch. Irish wristwatch.
It is really hard to say.
It's almost like a prophecy.
From Matos Ribeiro. Do you guys think it was odd that Tyrion said one great house had already disappeared? Did he forget the Baratheons? Well, technically what he said was one great house had already disappeared in this war. I think that's what he said, in this war. And so War of Five Kings is a separate war. And the Baratheons kind of died in the fallout from that. He could have said that. He could have just worded it differently. I think that was how he worded it, though.
I assume he was talking about the Tarleys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was. Yeah. No, he was
Oh,
talking
wait,
to
sorry,
Tyrells.
the
Yes.
Tyrells. Talking to the Tyrells about the Tyrells, right? Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. From Zoilo, Gilly's reading means the Maesters have to know about Jon's parentage. They may have been portrayed as idiots, but they aren't. Well, if they maybe a Maester or two, that doesn't. There's a ton of books in there, and maybe someone didn't, hasn't necessarily referred to that in a time that mattered, because Rhaegar's marriage wouldn't be something that mattered to anybody, like an annulment and a remarriage. Like that dude's been long dead, and they don't know that Jon Snow exists, so that would be just a piece of trivia to them. However, if it comes up, any of the Maesters are aware of it, they'd be like, you know what, there was not that thing in that passage. Then they might have a reason to go looking for it. And maybe someone's like, I remember that. It was in a book, blah, blah, blah. But right now, it's not going to strike them as mattering.
The person who read or cataloged that book, assuming anyone even did, they might have died already. In fact, it was given to Sam to rescribe. Maybe that's why. Maybe this is part of their process, and they haven't got to. Right? They're not gonna read the original text. They're gonna store that away somewhere else, and then they'll read the copy. To preserve the integrity of the book or whatever. And so maybe no one's even read it yet.
Question from Eleanor Johnson: would an annulment make Aegon and Rhaenys no longer heirs to the Iron Throne? Well, we don't know, because we don't know how Westerosi annulments work. In the real world, there's a variety of ways they can work, and we don't know how the Westerosi versions work. It's entirely possible, though. We just don't know yet, and it's an open question that we are absolutely going to do our best to find out. We have some comments on George R. R. Martin about annulments in World that we're going to talk about on Wednesday. They shed some light on it. They don't refer directly to this, though.
A thought that I had, like my sort of knee-jerk reaction, because Gilly asks what she's trying to pronounce. No, what does that mean? Sam's like...
Rhaegar?
Yeah. Sam's like, oh, it's when a man sets aside his wife. I'm like, what if a wife wants to set aside her husband? How? And I thought, I felt myself get upset about the slant on that statement. I was like, well, I guess in this world, in this time period, that's just the way it would be. But
maybe a powerful queen could set aside her husband or something like that. But there aren't even powerful. There haven't really been powerful queens in history of the Song of Ice and Fire. So yeah, there you go. Another question, or not a question. This is an observation from Jay Beachpour. Elia, not only did she get dumped without knowing it, Rhaegar remarried in her country in Dorne. Yeah.
Jerks.
That's really funny. So I see we're still working on the sound. This is, again, we're getting used to a new audio setup for people just joining us, and it's hopefully better, but it's certainly not perfect. So we're going to keep working on it. You guys feel free to give us feedback. I know it's not going to be the same for everybody else. That's one thing, is we're getting different reports from different people, but we're working on it. Shay is kicking ass as usual and trying to figure it all out. Another one from Acre Frey. Do you think the Maesters will reason that Sam left just because he heard from someone else that his family was just burned and the Archmaester didn't tell him? That's an interesting call. He might be mad. They might think, oh, he found out and then left. He went to go take Horn Hill because he thinks it's his now. They might, because just like we saw, when they were presented with this information, they tried to look at it in a bunch of different ways. They're like, well, maybe the Dragon Queen maybe this isn't maybe this is a fake message. So that you'd think that they would entertain all the possibilities and like, this novice ran away. They might bring that up. Why? Yeah. That's a great catch. Yeah,
It's a great catch, but it frustrates me because I was hoping it would awaken them up to how serious Sam was. But now I realize they'll have some other motive for Sam, and it won't waken them up. So.
It'll have to. Yeah, some things will depend on if they notice any books missing. Because I can easily see them not knowing those books are missing. Because there's so many books. They were like, was it Sam that took those? Okay, from Steph A. Did Sam's sister say she was betrothed? Wouldn't she inherit Horn Hill? Yeah. I mean, it does pass to the girls next. Yeah, so it would if it doesn't pass to the girl, if they don't decide to somehow finagle a way for Sam's fake kid to inherit, then it would be one of the sisters. But if the sisters are already married, that's the thing. If she had already gotten married, then it would become complicated because it's harder for a sister to inherit when they've already become lady of another castle. That kind of sometimes remove them from the line of succession.
It might create a conflict of the new husband trying to claim it.
Yeah, especially if they have kids. He couldn't just claim it outright, but as soon as they have a kid, he can be like, my kid gets this.
Yeah.
Or our kid gets this. Yeah, of course, that would be a long time from now. Well, unless that kid's already born, but that doesn't seem likely. Yeah, now we have Misty 306. I'm sorry, I'm backing up here. Grimnir Reaper. What would happen if all the female characters that have shown boobs flash Night King all together? would he do a double take? Maybe more than a double take.
What if all the male characters that are showing boobs flash in Night King?
I like that pun implied there. Double take for as a pair of boobs. Yeah. I don't know that he's moved so easily. There. I mean, on the other hand, we haven't seen any female White Walker, so maybe they're just like really just been 8,000 years since he's been with a woman. Okay, so Misty36 wants to know more details about the Kialo.com contest, which we talked about at the beginning. You're going to want to check our website. We've got a post there, or we're going to have the post there shortly. I don't know if we put it up yet.
Not shortly.
Not shortly? Is it already there?
No, it's not there. I haven't even written it.
Okay, well, it'll be
maybe
by
not shortly, but
shortly.
eventually.
I mean within the next 12 hours or so. I didn't mean like 5 minutes or something.
5 minutes.
No, I wouldn't mean that. So that's going to explain it more. It's really difficult to explain how their debates work, but I will explain a little more of it. There's going to be the community of debaters are going to vote on the submitted debates, and then the final 100 will be submitted or will be selected, and then it comes over to us judges. The judges, there's going to be 9 or 10 judges, and each of us are going to pick. Are going to get handed like 10 or 11 of these, and we're going to pick the best one, and then we're going to all look at the one that we picked as best between the 9 or 10 of us and decide which is the best out of those. And there's more than just first place. I think there's cash prizes down to like 20th place. So, but yeah, like I said, the Kiala website's got it all explained, and we'll have it up, a link on our website as well in the near future. Acre Frey, do you think Arya will get frustrated enough with Sansa to take things into her own hands? Yeah, actually, I guess we've already talked about that. Yeah, so we think that's an entirely big possibility, and that would cause a lot of problems. That's the kind of thing that even if Littlefinger ends up losing this struggle to drive a wedge, it could cause permanent damage to the northern alliances. Big E. Gilly will point out Arya's dagger when she arrives at Winterfell. Gilly knows the dagger? Oh, because she saw it in the book. She saw it in the book. I wonder if she recognizes it. That would be awesome. Oh, I did not. The great catch. That's really cool. Really cool. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Apparently there's some script leakage going on in the comments. Shay's working on that. She can't catch it all, but guys, don't do that, please. We do not talk about leaks in the chat. Do not do that. You get banned, and we will be mad at you because that's really uncool. Harding Grimm. What if Jon won't be able to catch any white, but Benjen will offer himself? Well, Benjen already said he can't cross the wall, so then they already kind of one line to dialogue that out of the way. So they can't. Benjen just can't cross the wall. I don't think it's possible. Maybe he can get in a ship and go around, but I don't know that. I mean, they haven't sailed a ship to the north. I mean, I guess that's somehow could be. I guess there's a way to figure that out, but
also maybe he can't choose to cross the wall, but he could be taken. Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but like, what would they need? What if he tries to do it? He's like bump up into an invisible wall.
Well, what happened?
Like,
remember what happened when those whites tried to run into?
They sort of like
exploded. Yeah, they just died. Yeah,
disintegrated.
So
yeah,
we do have an example of that. And that should be less. That should be less powerful than the walls magic, I would think. Similar, but
yeah.
less
Will that be a problem for any white? No, because we've seen other white south. We saw at least the one that Jon killed when it was attacking Mormont. So,
Super chat from Grand Admiral Bendu. Is that a Star Wars reference? Because I think it is, and that's cool. Because I know Grand Admirals are in Star Wars. Anyway, it's a cool name. How many more houses/armies are left in the South? Not many. Like Cersei and Jaime's army is. They said they haven't done an accounting yet, but they lost a lot of it. Some of them had already made it to King's Landing, so they definitely have some soldiers left. And of course, they're talking about hiring mercenaries. But the Tarly army is basically submitted to Daenerys, and a lot of the Lannister soldiers were in that. So that's kind of a Lannister-Tarly combo army, a Reach Western army. The Dorne armies is sitting there, I guess. They're probably just done. They've probably just been written out of the show. Technically, they should be there. The Stormlands should have armies, but no one's talking about them.
It might depend partly on what you consider to be an army. You can imagine there might be several different lords who might have 100 or a few hundred men. And even if you put all of them together, you might have a few thousand. But if they're not used to working, if they haven't trained together, if they're not properly equipped, do you count that as an army?
Yeah. And then, of course, Dany still has a lot of her Dothraki, she lost a few, certainly, maybe more, not a few, but relatively speaking, that battle went really well. She probably took pretty minor losses there, and she had a lot of Dothraki. So it's pretty clear, like, from what Jaime says, is not only do we have less soldiers, we can hire mercenaries, and he says, like, so what? Like, the Dothraki will beat any army I've ever seen, mercenaries or not, and there's the dragons, so, yeah, lots of stuff. Okay, just a reference to remember we have that giveaway. Don't forget, guys, we're giving away the GRM boxes. send an email to WesterosHistoryGiveaway@gmail.com to be entered. It's free to enter. All you got to do is say giveaway on the chat. And Shea says we've already got 30 giveaway emails, over 30 so far.
Nice.
So get in there. We'll be drawing 1 this week, and I guess 2 next week and 2 the week after. Okay. Let's see. Do we have any more questions? I think we might be running out here. It's about time to shut it down.
Yeah, we're almost 2.5 hours. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So not quite as long as last week. That's fine because that was really long last week. We got a really good number of people today. Thank you all very much for showing up. And thanks very much to Ashea for kicking butt on the production again as we're getting used to some new things here. Still time to get into Super Chat if you'd like, but I'm going to get to our acknowledgments and Patreon credits and all that fun stuff as we say goodbye. We'll be back on Wednesday, and we will, of course, do our Saturday stream as well. So let's take care of that. Thanks to Michael Klarfeld for the video intro. Thanks to Joey Townsend and Jesse Coal for our music. Thanks to all of you all for attending and asking questions and having fun in the comments box there. There's a lot of good chats happening anytime we're talking. There's lots of other conversations happening as well. That's part of the fun of joining us at the live streams, is participating in these conversations, not just listening to us. That's part of the value. Also, thanks to start off with our patrons list. Our peers of the realm include the mysterious BR, that's Hand of the King. And we have, Sean, this one's for you.
This is Lady Suzanne Sinistral. Lady Suzanne Sinistral, the learned, holder of the left-handed Valyrian shears called Penance, Hand of the Beard.
Right on, Hand of the Beard, cool. Then we have Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog and Warden of the West. Lord George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Cabethian Frozen, Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South. You know, I do see someone talking about how there was no Theon this episode. Yeah, we breathe. I said that like I threw that out there as like a one-sentence thing. But yeah, it was a little peculiar, but I guess, again, they just didn't have time. But I imagine that they'll have a little resolution to that. Hopefully. Theon's got to do something. Might be when we finally get some more Euron action. We also have Lord Osborne of Castle Werewood, spreading the old gods by planting werewood saplings in the Reach, Stormlands, Crownlands, and overseas. His motto is, "Our roots run deep." Lord James Tuttle is King of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, commander of the Royal Fleet, consisting of the Narrow Fleet, led by flagship Caraxes, and the Bloodstone Fleet, led by flagship Prince Daemon. The small council is made up of Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight, Master of Whisperers, Grand Maester Saria of the Barrows is Cinder of the Citadel, Lord Robert Jacobs is Master of Coin, Rosie the Clever is Master of Laws. Ashea is Queen's High Council. It consists of Lady Jane of House Celtigar, the Emerald of the Evening, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Axe, Painkiller. Of course, she reads yours on the days that she's in front of the camera, and I read them on the other days. Lady Maya of House Swan is Mistress of Whisperers. Elia of Upstate is Master of Coin. We have Grand Maester Bryce, who's waiting on a full nickname that she's working on. And we have, for now, who's also working on her name, the Lady ES, we'll call her Master of Laws. We do have a super chat from Perry here in Mexico. When did Sam let Bran through the wall, as he stated to the Maesters? That would have been, I guess, season 4? I don't recall. It was season 4 or 5. But he did do that. Yeah, remember, they ran into each other, and Bran made Sam promise not to tell who he was, and that's why Jon just now learned that she's alive. Another super chat from Pino123. Ashea, Queen of the Tots and Protector of the Stream.
Queen of Avocado now.
Now she's Queen of Avocado. Yeah, she's moved on from the Tots, but she earned that title. She still gets to keep it. Thanks for that one. That's our good buddy there, Pino. Moving on, we also have First Sword Jeff Gnarly, the Long Snapper. I gave him a double shout out this time, apparently. King's Justice Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate. We have Sean right here for you.
Grand Maester Clark, protector of wisdom and beards.
Our King's Guard is commanded by Lord Commander Sir Christopher Dane of Starfall, Sentinel of the Torrentine. We also have our lords and ladies in their castles. Lady Direliz of Castle Nyaki is the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Lord Skip of the Velt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. Alicia Everlasting is of the Green Blood and Lady of Desert Rose. Lord Ryan is of Castle Stonegate, guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Ashland Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian steel machete Everglazed. Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Donhold. Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is guardian of the hidden 100-acre Werewood, holder of the Vorpal Snugglebunny. Lord Brandon Brewer of... I swear you laugh every time I read that one. I don't blame you. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackruin, sworn alesmith to House Stark, Grand Master of the Zithomancer's Guild and Keeper of the Buzz. Brian the Defender, Lord of the Spearfort and the Freelands, last scion of Clan McCulloch. Motto, strength and courage. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is first Forester of the Old Gods, sworn to House Ironwerewood. Motto, listen for the silence. Connor the Dungeon Master is Lord of Catamount Keep and guardian of the Smoky Mountain Pass. We also have Ashea's Queen's Guard, led by Lord Captain Commander Hayma Helminth, the Sellsword Sentinel. Sean's Beard Guard,
Lord Commander George the Golden, Sir Joshua Oakhart, the White Oak, and Lady Rita of the Coppermane, the Unbound. Dance the Fervor.
Nice motto, Dance the Fervor, right in line with Sean there. Perfect, perfect. And certainly last but not least, we have our Night's Watch, our History of Westeros Night's Watch, which is led by Lord Commander Daenerys Flint, avenging the memory of Brave Danny. First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield. First Builder Patchface of Motley Wisdom. First Steward Sir Jurion of the Torrentine, called Palewind. And as has been a recent trend, I've been grabbing a few other names who don't normally get shout-outs just to get them in there because they're just so fun. Let's go with Dolorous of the Dour Demeanor. Let's go with Thomas the Woodhead. How about Sir Clayson Six Fingers? How about Maester Mandy the Reader? Servant of the Tor. How about... Oh, someone else is asking about Sean's shirt. He explained it earlier, but he'd be happy to explain it again.
Where?
Oh, where did you get it?
I'm almost positive it was Redbubble, but it might have been T Fury.
Okay, well...
Which, by the way, I recommend both those sites.
I agree. Yeah, we've both gotten a lot of shirts there. Maestress Arha. Maestress, I like that term. Arha the Silent, who shattered a link of Valyrian steel. Archmaester Jason, Heretic of the Citadel. And Shadowbinder Jasmine, Lady of House Dane. All right, folks. That is it for today. We'll see a lot of you all on Wednesday and or Saturday. Hope you guys have a great week in between all that. Come back to us with some good theories and questions, because as we know, you can't think of everything in these first 24 hours, so we'll have some more to say later in the week, and I know you guys will too.
Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Dancing Sean.
At Dancing Sean, that's right. Do that. Help him grow his following. He's been very active on Twitter, doing a lot of fun things with your haiku and all that. Twitter is fun. It is a time sink, but it is fun. Okay, everybody, on behalf of Ashea and Sean and everybody else, see you guys next time. Valar Rewatches.